Okay, well, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Um, I have to read this, so please bear with me. You are hereby notified that I've called a special meeting of the governing body of the city of Merriam, Kansas, on the written request of 3 members of the council. Said meeting to be held 7 p.m. on Thursday, January 19, 2023, in the council chambers, Merriam City Hall, 9001 West 62nd Street, for the purpose of discussion regarding the Merriam Drive Improvement Project. That's signed by me. Our 3 council people are Amy Ryder, Christine Hands, and Whitney Yodrich are the 3 requesting members. Before we begin, if you're able, please stand and join us at the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor Pape.
Here.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Here.
Councilmember Hands.
Here.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Here.
Councilmember Leahy.
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
Here.
Councilmember Ryder.
Here.
Councilmember Silvers.
Here.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just for the record, so people know kind of the order that we're going to be proceeding this evening. Staff's going to make a presentation, well, then we're going to have some council questions. There'll be time for public comment. We have several people signed up already for that. And then we'll have some final council questions, and then we'll see if there's a motion to direct staff after that. Having said that, I'll turn this over to Mr. Engel to start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Welcome to our special meeting. It's kind of weird to say that. I've been here 10 years. We've never had a special meeting. I've been the manager since 2016. We've never had a special meeting, and it just seems a little odd. We've passed 2 sales tax initiatives, didn't have a special meeting. We tore down a community center, built a new one, didn't have a special meeting. We've worked several TIF deals, some better than others, never had a special meeting. But after a 4-year public process to design a street project, we're having a special meeting. But that just tells you how important it is this evening that we get this right, that we have a conversation, we have a public conversation, and we determine what the best course of action is moving forward. Let's see, how to move this forward. So okay, how do I get it up on the screen? So Mayor already covered the agenda, more or less how we're going to work. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro. We're going to talk about the options that the council's presented with this evening. We're going to go through some background, provide the council opportunity for some questions, some public comments, some final questions, and then we'll see if there's the will to have a vote for what we need to move forward with. I think everybody's pretty certain on what we're here for. I have to be honest, a little nervous, special meeting, not exactly sure what to prep for this special meeting. I struggled with it a little bit. Should we rehash the last 4 years worth of public process? Should we actually go through all of the public meetings that we had? Should I go back and pull all of the PowerPoints for all the public meetings and present them as one big long process this evening that helped inform us to where we are today? Condense 4 years down into 4 hours, perhaps. I decided against that. I didn't think that was fair. I didn't think that was a good use of everybody's time. I didn't think it was fair to the people that chose to be involved in those processes and provide input on those processes. So as a substitute for that, I've simply laid out all of those plans here. When we talk about process, this is the process that we followed. Each one of these is a plan that has informed the design that we're here to discuss tonight. Each one of these was a public process. Each one of these had a committee. They had consultants. They had stakeholders, stakeholder interviews. They had people that were invited to be part of these processes. And each one entailed the next, taking a 30,000-foot view, taking it down literally to curb level. So when we talk about process, that's all I'm going to really talk about process until we turn it over to Brian here in a couple seconds. So I really don't have anything new, data-wise, to produce. you know, we clearly have to present something, so we're gonna go a little bit into the PSP, cover the PSP, cover a little bit of 2040. Brian's gonna do that since he rode herd over those processes. And we invited, and they graciously accepted. We've got some technical experts in the house. We've got our city engineer, Randy Gorton with BHC Roads, who also happens to be the leader of the design team. We've got Jay Aber, who's traffic engineer with PVR. He was our traffic engineer during our PSP process. Some of you may have recognized him. We walked downtown together. We looked at some of the situations downtown. Jay was very front and center on that PSP process. And then we have Ray Webb, who's traffic operations manager with Operation Greenlight. We asked him to come because there is the possibility, the opportunity that with Operation Greenlight, we might be able to mitigate some of the concerns at the intersection. We don't want to overpromise, but if there's technical questions, these are the folks that can answer the technical answers. But they don't have new information. So again, I struggle with what am I going to present to the council? I don't have new information. I guess what I was looking for is I was looking for a silver bullet. I was looking for a one best answer, a one thing fits all. And it dawned on me that really what we're here to do tonight, and the reason we have a special meeting, is we're here to do politics. We are here tonight to do politics. Politics is what we do when there's conflicting values and there's no one single best answer. Politics is what we do when we have conflicting values and there's no one single best answer, right? It's real easy when 1 + 1 = 2. It's real easy when red plus blue equals purple. That's not what we have. We have a situation where, depending on the perspective that you look at this issue, we find merit in all of these views. We find merit, we find value in them. But we need to distinguish what values are going to take precedence this evening. That is what governing bodies do. They legislate values when they're in conflict. That's what you're tasked with this evening. That's what I can inform you with this evening. You're going to have to legislate which values take precedent that you hear tonight so that we can move this project forward or not move this project forward. It's important that as we listen to the comments, as we look at the process that we've had, we look for those values because they exist. You're going to hear comments, you're going to hear things that point to certain values or point to certain things, and they're really not about those values, they're about other values. You're going to hear that from the staff, you're going to hear that from perhaps people that are for what we're doing and people that are against what we're doing. But it's important that we dig down and we try to recognize the values so that you have something that you can grab a hold of when it's time for you to make a decision on how we move forward, because we have to legislate those values this evening. We have to move this project forward or not. So it's important, just as a primer, to talk about values a little bit. We've got private values. Private values are prosperity, efficiency, liberty, certainty, convenience. Those are private values. If I'm a small business owner, that's small business owner 101. Those are absolutely the values I ascribe to. Capitalism operates best with certainty. Give me the rules, give me the parameters, tell me what the regulations are, let me figure out how to earn $1, and then leave me alone. I need certainty. When we don't have certainty, well, look at the last year. Look at the last 24 hours. When we don't have certainty in the market, things go haywire. These folks have figured out a way to be prosperous in downtown Merriam. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic. We shouldn't begrudge them at all. But these values are private values. We have public values that we need to acknowledge also. Those public values are accessibility, diversity, responsiveness, transparency, progress, and safety. Those are just a handful of them. Those are values that we have to be mindful of. These are values that should flow through, as public servants, all of the things that we do. We need to be mindful of those values, we need to look at those values, and we need to ascribe to those values and make sure that they're included in the decisions that we make. But you ultimately have to choose, as the elected officials of the city of Merriam, which values are going to take precedent on this particular item. So that being said, I'm going to jump into the options. The options are quite simple. They were in your agenda packet. We can move forward as designed and look for opportunities to improve once it's complete. We can keep Merriam Drive south of Hocker exactly as it is today, make no significant changes. I think that's what some folks would like to see. And knowing that there might be a desire for some sort of a compromise, we tried to think of if there was a middle-of-the-road compromise. That's what that third option is, which is to simply extend the 3-lane profile that exists in the design today further to the north, allow more queuing space. There's not a whole lot of room down there, so that requires sacrificing on-street parking. So it might not look to some folks as a compromise, but that would be some level of compromise if that's what the council seeks this evening. So as the background, you can read these, I'm not gonna go into what we learned from 5701. I'm simply gonna give you the trend line of how we got to today through all of these processes before I turn it over to Brian. 2017, Merriam taxpayers said that they'd like to have a new community center. We found ourselves with a piece of property downtown in a building that was no longer really suitable for operations. So what do we do with it? We decided, as we often do, to have a public process. We put together a committee. We had stakeholder interviews. We had public open houses. And as folks came in, several folks were on that committee. They got bitten by the bug. They're council members now. And some of them are in the audience. I'm not here to talk about the outcome of 5701. What I'm simply here to tell you is that after the first public meeting where we asked the public, what would you like to see? They gave us a variety of things, a visioning of what they would like to see downtown. And that really created our North Star for the committee's work. And one of the things that jumped out of the page at me was to create a catalyst for downtown. Whatever we invest in, create a catalyst for downtown. Well, that kind of struck me as odd because I'd only been the manager for a year at that point in time. And I was of the understanding and the opinion that we had essentially reached an uneasy peace with downtown. We had ceded control of downtown to the businesses and that we stayed out of their business, they stayed out of our business, they stayed of ours, we stay out of theirs. And that was just how we conducted business in this city. That was the city that I thought I inherited. But what I was hearing was that from this public process, people wanted more downtown. They wanted our investment to be a catalyst for downtown. Nobody said, I want less. Nobody said, I don't want this business or that business. They simply said there was an opportunity that exists for more. And that us, as city leaders, the investments we make should create an environment for more to occur down there. So that kind of struck me, so I talked to Ken Sissom, who was the mayor at the time, and he told me, he said, you know, when I started in the late 70s, we had the downtown wars of 1980, and then 20 years later, we had the downtown wars of 2020, or 2000, and we'll probably just have to have the downtown wars of 2020. He wasn't really committal on what he thought we should do, but he just simply was stating the facts as he had experienced them. And that really struck me because it dawned on me that you really only probably have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to figure out, is downtown what the city wants, what all of the city wants? What is our opportunity? Should we pass that opportunity up? I didn't know. I was prepared we had a street project that was put in there that we were going to do that was simply going to be a mill and overlay. Pull the curbs out, put them back in, put the street back in exactly like it is, because that's what we do in Merriam. But that's not what I thought I was hearing. So we pushed that street project back, and we said, well, next year, we're going to start our Comp 2040 plan. That is a visioning plan of what we would like to see for 20 years. I'm not going to go into that because Brian is, but I knew that at that point in time, we could get a little bit closer potentially to figuring out what the public would like to see downtown in the future, not tomorrow, in the future, and better inform our multi-million-dollar investment in the streetscape if we had that process. So we got into the 2040 process where we knew we could focus on downtown, and if we heard similar comments about being a catalyst downtown in our investments, we would allow a little bit more time to have one more downtown-specific study, which was our PSP study. So again, we took this from a 30,000-foot concept down through process over numerous years to where we are now, curb level design. So again, I'm going to turn this over to Brian. I'm going to let him give you a little highlight of the comp plan, and then we will stand for any questions that you have.
Evening Council, Mayor, Brian Dyer, Community Development Director. I brought my water with me, so you know I'm going to be up here for a little while, so I apologize for that. Purpose of what I'm going to do is not get too much into the details of how we got here, but to, again, provide a little bit more depth, a little bit more review of all the processes that we have gone through up to this point. So, again, Merriam Comprehensive Plan 2040, as Chris mentioned, started that in 2019, continued on through 2020, council adopted in 2021. Had a robust public participation. I will say it did occur, we started it before COVID, had a lot of outreach, had a lot of typical outreach. Then we went into COVID and really went to more of an online thing, more online presence, but still had a lot of participation. I would honestly think that we had more participation in that way. I think I credit to the fact that everybody was kind of cooped up in their homes. They really didn't have much else to do, so they joined us online. So again, I think we had more public participation in that method than if we'd done a more traditional method. Also including that public participation part, had interviews with stakeholders, including downtown businesses and property owners. The comprehensive plan identified a number of areas that could be possible sites for redevelopment. One was downtown. And additionally, the comprehensive plan also, as it delves into a number of things, delved into the transportation system, recommended that the city needs to look at increasing bike and pedestrian facilities, consider reductions in traffic lanes on arterial streets, and other improvements for bike ped improvements for Merriam Drive. As part of that, there's a statistically significant study that was done by ETC, the same folks that do our surveys for how we provide services for it. And that survey had a number of questions in there, and some of them are in regard to downtown. I'll just briefly go through some of the highlights of it. 70% of the respondents to that survey said they'd like to see the city provide downtown with the opportunity to attract a wider variety of businesses and customers. 71% said they'd like to see to improve the appearance of downtown Merriam Drive. 70% said they'd like to see downtown become something that creates a more reputable identity for the city of Merriam. 48% said they'd like the city focus on adding new bicycle infrastructure and encourage transportation options. I point out that 27% of the overall 100% were not sure. And then 53% of the respondents said they view building a walkable and bikeable community as something that should guide the future growth for the city. So again, that was a statistically significant survey of the residents of Merriam for the Comprehensive Plan 2040 project. And then here is a rendering. We've all seen this a number of times as we've gone through it. Again, this is a rendering, a vision, an aspiration for what downtown could look like in 2040. Again, it's aspirational, but a couple of things I want to point out. First of all, it's 2040, a number of years from now. So what we're looking at today in regards to the design for Merriam Drive is something that would help lend itself towards this 2040 vision. Kind of as I was looking at this, we've all been in situations where we've taken and put on our hindsight glasses and go, if only they would have thought of this before. And so when we were doing the Downtown Merriam Design Plan, that's kind of the way we looked at it. 20 years from now when folks are at the dais, in your guys' places and our spots, we hope they don't look back at this inflection point and go, if only they had done this. So that's one of the kind of the perspectives we took at in looking at downtown Merriam. Also in regards to that, we did Mobile Merriam, which is a bike facility study. It was led by a citizen committee. It was accepted by the council on April 1st of last year. It talks about how we can improve things we ought to do for bicycle facilities throughout the city. It also includes recommendations for pedestrian trails and other amenities such as that. And obviously, as it says, it looked at recommending improvement in bicycle facilities through downtown. So from the comprehensive 2040 plan, we obviously saw a great opportunity. Mid-America Regional Council, Mark, does a Planning Sustainable Places grant, a PSP grant, and the city realized it was a great opportunity to take all of the information we were learning in 2040, apply for a PSP grant to take a real close look at downtown, to take a deep dive into what is the appropriate design, what are the appropriate facilities for downtown, to allow it to again, perhaps change. Also at the same time, somewhat serendipitously, Overland Park was looking at doing North Merriam Drive, and we, instead of saying, hey, we got too much on our plate, we said, hey, we will partner with you to look at North Merriam Drive as well. So essentially, during that time, we were looking at Merriam Drive, all the way from Johnson Drive, all the way to Southwest Boulevard. So 2 different plans, but 1 continuous look at the corridor. So the Plan Sustainable Places process, the PSP process, had a steering committee and advisory committee for the downtown Merriam Corridor Plan, looked at a variety of documents and analysis. You will see those all up here. One of the things I will also point out, we've talked a lot about a lot of these things already, but community for all ages, that's something that the city is participating in. That's something that was a goal of the council. We are participating at the bronze level, and that's something that Community for All Ages, amongst the many things it does, is looking at how a city can design itself to serve people of all ages, young and old. And one of those things is walkability. One of those things is how do you get folks options for transportation to your activity centers without having to use a vehicle. So just want to point that out. That's yet another thing that the city has been working towards that fits within this rubric. And then, again, the PSP process involved a lot of outreach, walking tours, workshops, committee meetings, stakeholder interviews, a number of different things. And this is for both of the plans that we did. So looking specifically at the downtown Merriam Corridor Plan, the very first advisory committee meeting, the consultants pretty much stood up and said, hey, there is not enough room in the built environment for downtown, for the historic downtown area, to get everything in there that everybody's going to want, such as wider sidewalks on the west side, on-street parking, an entry feature, and still maintain the current street cross-section. So there are limits within we can work. Obviously, if we want to tear down buildings, we could ability to do more of those, but don't think that was anything anybody was even considering. So based on all the analysis, put together, the committee looked at, the downtown Merriam committee looked at how is the best way, what's the best design to create a structure or bones for the downtown area to allow downtown to transform to a safer, more walkable, bikeable, and pedestrian-friendly atmosphere. So that's, again, a perspective that the committee was looking at when they were going through the planning process. Then also on March 14th of last year, staff made a formal presentation to the City Council about the proposed design. And then ultimately, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the committee, advisory committee here in just a second, but ultimately the committee in early April, by consensus, recommended the council adopt the Merriam Corridor Plan, Downtown Merriam Corridor Plan. And then in September of last year, the council unanimously adopted both of the plans. So also what's happening in the background here as well, I think we all remember the Corps of Engineers showed up at about the same time and said that Congress had fully funded the Upper Ticker Creek mitigation project. Obviously that mitigation project, the hope, the ultimate goal, desire from that is to get a large significant portion of downtown out of the floodplain, which again, if that would occur, would significantly take away one of the big impediments to redevelopment of downtown. So I have to remember that is also happening in the background as well. So a little bit about the advisory committee, a little bit about the process in there. Had a public meeting early April. Heard a lot of comments from the public. Had some downtown Merriam businesses there. Had some general public there. Had a great open house. So just kind of show how the committee heard these concerns and how they made some adjustments on there. As you can see, kind of what's outlined there is there were some concerns about the amount of green space that was occurring on Merriam Drive and how that could impede or hinder parking during a car show or other events. So that was something that the committee looked at reducing, and they did. Had questions about the 58th Terrace and Merriam Drive intersection. Could a northbound semi-truck or fire truck make that turn? Had BHC look at whether or not they could do that. They can make that turn. They will have to go in a little bit into the northbound lane, but that turn can be made. They provide templates to show that it works. And then look specifically at the intersection. You'll see there on the, my mouse will work, on the left-hand side, this is the original concept that the committee was looking at. As you can see, had a narrow entry feature, much less stacking that could occur for both of the lanes there, both the left turn and the through lane. Committee heard that, took that information back, The consultants looked at it and came up with the revisions, which is what you see on the right-hand side. Wider entryway feature, the stacking is increased down here. They moved the entry feature further to the south to allow for that stacking. So again, an example how the committee heard some comments and made adjustments based on those comments. May not been exactly what those commenters wanted, but again, heard them and made some adjustments. Again, another analysis of how that increased stacking could help parking and queuing there. Excuse me, queuing, not parking. Again, a little bit more about the process of changing it, what happened between the open house and the adoption of it. As you can see again, here on the left-hand side, that was the previous iteration. And then with wanting and desiring to add additional stacking on there, there is the revised iteration. This is, again, a graphic that we've all seen many, many times. So going into, going into what is currently on the ground and what is being proposed per the engineering design. So the PSP project for downtown Merriam was a more schematic plan. That was given to BHC to do the engineering, the actual design on the ground plans, kind of what Chris talked about, going to looking specifically at the curb. So what you'll see there in black is what, again, a pretty good rendering of what the engineering design plans are showing. Again, obviously the arrow shows existing conditions, the black shows proposed conditions. So this design goes from 55th Street south all the way down to Merriam Drive. Merriam Drive is obviously in the middle here, cutting right to left as we go north to south. 55th Street is going up and down, so going north to south there. One of the first things I want to point out here was, again, concerns about buses. This is a great example of how the city has worked with DS Bus Lines in regards to that busing concern. If you all recall, the city worked with DS Bus Lines for this 55th and Merriam Drive intersection. Essentially, DS Bus Lines wanted this eastern leg of 55th Street to be more of a private entrance for them. They wanted it to be signaled, and so they could really use this for their bus traffic primarily. Obviously, stacking buses on this area of 55th Street it relieves quite a bit of possibility of stacking on Merriam Drive. So this is one of the things that the city has worked with on DS Bus Lines in regards to the bus. As you may recall, the buses now have an entrance quite a bit further off the screen down here to the east off of 55th Street. So continuing on to the south, again, 55th Street, as you can see here, here's a 3-lane cross section. 2 through lanes and 1 center turn lane here, and then a common center turn lane here. One of the things that we did want to point out is that the North Merriam Drive PSP plan, that one of the big things we wanted to see out of that, everybody wanted to see, is make sure they met up, and they do. The North Merriam Drive PSP plan, the Merriam Connected Corridor plan as it's called, calls for a 3-lane cross section essentially from Antioch Road down to 55th Street, which marries up with this proposal right here. It also calls for a 10-foot bike rec path on the west side of Merriam Drive, which is also being indicated here. You can see it better over here. But on the west side of Merriam Drive, there is proposed to be a 10-foot bike rec path. Again, addressing what we heard from the public, and they wanted to see increased bike ped facilities. So continuing on, as we can travel south, as you can see, really it's a 3-lane cross section, sidewalk on the east side, rec path on the west side, crossing over the Merriam Drive Bridge. Merriam Drive Bridge over Turkey Creek, excuse me. Did want to point out, here's another example how this plan is working with the bus traffic and trying to address the bus traffic. This plan is proposing a dedicated right turn lane into the bus facility. So again, an opportunity for buses to queue in out of the main through lanes and over here on the side areas, so they won't be in the middle of traffic. This is another example how folks that participated in the advisory committee process affected change that they wanted to see in this area. The original concept for this area, 57th Street, here's 5701 down here, here's the church across the street, Merriam Hardware's right here. So this was originally a concept of simply a two-lane cross-section in this area. But there was concerns, the committee heard some concerns about the ability for these business owners to have trucks get access back into their facility, make the turning movements. And the committee, along working with the consultant, put the middle turn lane back in. So it is very much the same configuration as currently there right now, but this also adds in some additional diagonal parking. This parking will serve a number of functions. It'll obviously serve downtown. It'll serve 5701 to whatever it redevelops as. It also will serve an immediate need for any kind of downtown events. Turkey Creek Car Festival, downtown Merriam Live. This additional pavement area will be great areas for food trucks, for display vehicles, and things like that. So this serves, those diagonal parking serves a number of needs. Continuing on further south, now we're at Farmers Market. As you can see, this is the area, shows the proposal of moving the entrance to the north, making this into a pedestrian plaza. Again, this entrance to the north, as we've talked a number of times, really makes the planning and the configuration of the farmers market during event areas much readily doable and easier. You can see a couple of crosswalks in this area. Also, you can see diagonal on-street parking to provide parking for downtown, parking for businesses downtown, also to provide the ability to hold events and have activities occur in those areas. So all the way down to Johnson Drive and Merriam Drive. So we'll start a little bit different here. I'll start here at the intersection. Currently, the intersection has a four-lane cross-section, has a dedicated right turn lane. It's very short, stacking for a couple of vehicles. Has a through lane and has a dedicated left turn lane. What the plan proposes is to make this intersection, make the cross-section of this location into 3 lanes. So a dedicated through right turn lane and a dedicated left turn lane, and continue the north through lane. Shows this stacking continuing down here. I think it's important to know that the stacking right now for a dedicated left lane ends right about in this area. This is the area that turns into 2-lane turn lanes again. So this technically is not an area that's supposed to be for stacking for left turners. We all know it happens, but technically this area is not a dedicated left turn lane. So as we continue with the plan as conceived, maintains the number of existing on-street parking here. So maintains the current number of spaces, provides new on-street parking for the businesses located on the east side of Merriam Drive, provides 3 spaces here, and then additional 3 new spaces over here as well. It does get narrow here, so this is the point in which the dedicated left turn lane drops off, becomes a 2-lane cross-section at this point in time. Again, the idea of pedestrian friendly, being able to have a shorter lane area to walk across. Also, we'll note that this what it doesn't show here, will be striped for sharrows to designate a bike route. The bike route through this area will go along Merriam Drive and then connect up with the rec path that we talked about at at the farmers market. So that is the proposed reconfiguration of that intersection at that point. So again, this is an attempt to balance a number of needs right now, as Chris mentioned, a number of different values, balance the needs of the now, and then to balance the idea this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create the bones for downtown, to give it the ability to transform over the next 20 years, to become safer, more walkable, more pedestrian-friendly. I think with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
I think it's important to point out that the goal of the PSP project was not to increase the efficiency of Merriam Drive or the intersection downtown. If that was the goal, then we failed miserably a long time ago. You know, we traded off some of the level of service at that intersection for safety. You know, we're putting raised crosswalks in. We're narrowing the street. The assumption that we could do that and improve the efficiency of the flow of traffic or safety or increase bike ped facilities, there's just not enough room. So again, this is aligned with the goals of that process. Again, if that was wrong, then we didn't get this right a long time ago. So.
Happy to answer questions.
Do you have questions for Director Dyer? Oh, excuse me.
Apologize, Mayor. This is also be an opportunity if you have questions for any of the consultant, Operation Greenlight, city engineer, or Jay Aber with WSP, who was deputy engineer on the PSP project.
Okay, Ms. Aldridge, go ahead.
I have a question for the OGL.
Sure.
So I believe we're already using Operation Greenlight at Merriam Drive and Johnson Drive, right? So for anyone who doesn't know, Operation Greenlight means if traffic really stacks up, they can switch the light and clear the intersection, right? Where could we potentially add that in this process or along the street?
We actually have a presentation for OGL. Would you like a quick presentation of the capabilities of OGL?
Roll
see
it,
some-
I
I
guess.
I think I see a lot of heads nodding. Yes, please
I think
show
it
us.
would be valuable for the people who came here to understand how OGL works because we speak in an acronym and some people may have never heard of it.
What it does and what it doesn't do.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's important.
Because if we're talking about traffic
congestion.
congestion as a big portion of this, then this is a valuable piece of information.
So my name is Ray Webb with Mark. Operation Greenlight is just one of the many programs that that Mark has involved himself with. I understand time is of the essence, so let me just try to get some of the highlights. One of the things we do is we really support traffic signals and operations all across the region. We're up over 750 traffic signals. We've got 21 in your city that we work with. We combine federal funds with local funds to make that all happen. And let me be quick and get to this stuff. So really, it comes down to 4 elements: the signal timing and coordination. We can talk about that a little bit tonight. We make that possible with communications, a network that we build across the region. Some of that started in the early 2000s, actually. So, and then some of your cameras, for example, are things that we are able to communicate with and share and keep eyes on things. I think we house now 150 cameras on our server back at the MoDOT offices in Lee Summit, where we're just right across the hall from Kansas City Scout. We work with them every day, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of that here in just a second. So those are really the 4 elements. The part of the timing, the coordination, et cetera, is really the operations component that I really find really valuable, and I'll talk about that. So our partners, we're up to 27 now across the metro area and Federal Highway, of course, and we work with all those, and I've been involved with Mark now for 15 years doing this, and it's really exciting just to be able to work with all the different cities. We go anywhere from, I think it's Westwood with a 1 1/4 signals to MoDOT's got 222. So it really runs the gamut, and we provide the services. So this is a website we've done a few years ago. I think in 2018 we developed across the area where we tried to capture as many of the traffic signals as we possibly can. We've got those mapped. It's a GIS map. You can take a look. It's not real fancy. It doesn't do a lot, but if you're wondering where these signals are and who owns them, that's the intent. And the green light, green lines show the ones that we're involved with, and the black dots are others. And if you were to click those, then it'll take you to a phone number, a website, or whatever the city may want us to do. Anything else there? So real quick on this one, I just did a quick highlight here from 2022. 695 different times across the region, we would deal with something, a signal and flash, duck ped button, detection. Traffic signals are tricky little things out there that have issues with them pretty regularly, and so we try to rush issues to them, hopefully before the city calls you, and we can get somebody out there and take a look at that. Let's see, 77 retiming, that was a little bit down last year, but incident response, for example, 607 of those. More and more and more, we're working with crashes. Us and Scout are sharing that kind of information, and in the particular case of this area, we actually have, it's not quite the easy button, but we do have incident management plans that we can command on Johnson, on Shawnee Mission Parkway, on Antioch, where we literally go in, and as folks leave the freeway, we're making signal timing changes behind the scenes to try to accommodate. Maybe it's a right turn, maybe it's a left turn that suddenly is flowing a lot of cars. Instead of 12 seconds, our plan says, we're going to crank that up to 20 or 30, whatever the case may be. So we implement that, watch it carefully, and then make changes as traffic ebbs and flows. And system software, the only point here really is that I think we're kind of unique across the country, the Operation Greenlight program. If you go to Denver, many different software packages used across the region. We share this across the region, and hence the partnership that all 27 agencies have access to and can access one software system, in this case provided by TransCore called TransSuite. Again, just the videos, there's about 150 of those that we used to say that we'd always have to go out in the field and do our work. It's weird that we're sitting at our desk and it's actually richer data sitting at our desk sometimes we can open a cabinet door on. I'm going to skip this. It's something I'd be glad to come back and talk more in depth about OGL and what we do. What I wanted to spend a little bit is just your focus here in the cities. Like I said, 21 intersections. It's time of day plan. It's very common practice across the nation. So we'll have a morning plan, a midday plan, an afternoon plan. In your case, we do something a little different with the buses. We'll have a free plan that we operate. When the bus is kind of clear, then we jump that into the PM plan. We'll run that for a while. We'll taper that off, and then we'll run free overnight. And we have some things we do differently on the weekends. So in the case of you guys are unique with the railroad, we're certainly aware of that. We don't have much control over that, but we do get what I'd call a preempt. And we see when that happens. And obviously, we do some things out here. There's some things that what I will just say, kind of to wrap this up and not be lengthy, is that we're going to support you guys during this project as construction happens and after. So, for example, maybe when things wrap up, we'll be keeping an eye on it. Maybe we're coming out, we're taking out new data collection, we're modeling that data. Maybe we need to do something a little different when the plans are out there. I would expect that to be the case. But also during construction, we'll may want to be doing some things differently, which we do across the region. I would also say, so right now the way it operates, Johnson Drive is the coordinated corridor. So it is, if you will, favored to some extent. We, as best we can, try to get progression across Johnson Drive in the city. It's not different than like what we do across Shawnee Mission Parkway. Same thing. We take that all the way from Shawnee and we're running into Kansas City and trying to coordinate those sections as best we can and moving the large amounts of traffic and trying to get them to make the next one, et cetera. So that's it. Maybe I should just let it be at that, see what questions you might have, kind of let it go from there.
So, we have any questions for Mr. Webb? I would ask Mr. Webb, it's my understanding, I mean, you have cameras, but if for some reason there's a wreck on I-35 and they all divert down Merriam Drive, and now instead of having 20 cars stacked up, we've got 100 cars stacked up, can you actually change that temporarily to get more of those 100 cars through the Johnson Drive intersection?
We do, and we just did that just a few days ago. I-35 had a crash. It was a rollover crash just north of Johnson, and I think folks were bailing off all over the place. So we implemented that plan that affected Antioch, Johnson, Shawnee Mission Parkway, and then went in and maybe made some changes. Sometimes, all of a sudden, instead of the through, it's everybody's trying to make that left turn. If they're going east, they want to come up Antioch. The left turn suddenly becomes a heavy movement. So that's what that plan's intended to do, and it would be the same thing if we had some reason that Merriam became that diversion route, then same thing, we would try to make that change. And the way that works is if we're notified, so we're keeping an eye on things. We're 6:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night, depending on what's going on. We manage events out at Cable Dahmer and Independence. We have some special plans we run there. We actually have a little bit of a plan we run for Chiefs game that just kind of helps with pedestrians. So we're kind of have our fingers in a lot of that stuff all over the region.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Ms. Ryder.
And did you say that you do have communication with railroad systems? Like if a train is coming, then you can get as many cars through before they get to the intersection?
Well,
no?
that is not the case. All we do is react to that, and unfortunately, we have to put a signal into flash, and that's really what we do. There's some things that haven't been done in the region we're looking at that potentially we could maybe make that signal from the railroad, pass it over to Merriam and Johnson and see if maybe we could do something different. We've looked at it. Like I said, it's kind of innovative. We've not tested that. We don't know if it's possible. It'll cost a little money due to the controllers in the field right now aren't capable of doing that level of effort. So, and I will say before I forget it, and I missed it earlier, We've been working with a company here in Merriam for as long as I've been on board with Mark with electronic technology, and they've been a great partner for us dealing with our wireless communications. So just a little plug.
Mr. Silvers?
I really just had a comment. I used to, in the early 2000s, drive from Brush Creek to Flum using Brush Creek and Cheyenne Mission Parkway, and I can tell you that there has been, in the past 20 years, a major improvement in the timing of the lights. I used to actually try to avoid taking Cheyenne Mission Parkway. I would use that route all hours of the day and night, because it used to be painful to take that route. And now I think it's actually very easy, and it's actually a nice drive, and it's interesting to learn that how coordinated of an effort it was through the green light system to make that happen.
Mr. LaHaye, did you have?
Mayor?
I was just going to ask about the preamps from the train. Does it just turn Johnson Drive all flashing, or does it open up north and southbound Johnson Drive and only block, or the other way around, open up Merriam Drive north and south and block Johnson?
So we put the southbound ramp into flash, and also that used to happen on the other side. We've since changed that, so that operates normally. But yeah, that's really all that occurs there. But certainly, we see, for example, we pulled a lot of data out, and it looks like we're getting a preempt about every hour, whether that's a train actually coming through, a maintenance vehicle, whatever the case may be. So we see what's happening, and it certainly gives us something to look into and maybe try to make some improvements based on that.
Mayor, this is Dave Neal.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Mr. Neal.
I didn't know, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there physically. I missed some of the viewing some of the presentation, so I apologize. I've got several questions, but I have one for Mr. Webb. I'm trying to clarify in my mind what level of control and response is actually practical here. Are you saying that is the ability to keep the left turn light on for a longer period of time until the traffic clears, is that something that is human monitored, or is it some sort of algorithm, or is it how quickly does it respond, in other words, to an actual observed traffic stacking problem, or is it more or less well, actually, I just kind of want to understand it as best I can, how actual real-time responsive it is. I understand that if there's an accident on I-35 or somewhere else, an emergency, which you can probably pick up from a variety of ways that something like that has happened. We're talking about, for example, trains here, which is, we obviously don't have that from the conversation ability to sense that at this point automatically. So you'd be looking at actual traffic backup that's observed. How real time is that?
Yeah, I do understand your question. So let me address that by saying it's not as real time as I think you're portraying it. So in normal operations, like I say, we're going to have a morning, noon, afternoon plan, et cetera. Those are pre-developed plans based on some traffic modeling, some observation, some driving, a lot of work that goes beyond just the modeling effort. The other thing is your detection is where things really are what I would call responsive. So if the detection's all working properly, and that's another thing that we try to keep an eye on, once that left turn, for your example, that traffic clears, it'll go ahead and what we call gap out, and it'll move to the next phase. If there's too much traffic on that left turn, there is a point where that has been programmed as a sort of a max value. So in the case where we see some things like that happen around the region, we can go in and make some changes up to a point. And as an example, what I like to say is if you've got a 60-second cycle, we give one direction 30 seconds to the other 30 seconds. So that's way oversimplification, but we're, moving that time around. And then, of course, we have to remove all the yellows, the reds, the clearance intervals, the pedestrian intervals, and those sorts of things, and accommodate all that at the same time. But the kind of thing that would make it, if you would call it responsive, there are those things in the country that are out there that are systems that will be what I'd call a little bit more responsive. We run right now on US 71 in Midtown. We actually have a traffic responsive we've been running a number of months, and it seems to be working well. We've got 90,000 cars a day that traverse that, and what happens is traffic patterns are often maybe very heavy, maybe the next day they're a little different. We can take those morning plans and we can extend them, or maybe there's something happening on a weekend where it's not normal, and make some changes. That was a unique system there. I'm not sure how applicable it would be in Merriam for a single intersection, if you will. But what I do want you to know is that we're here to support you, and we're going to be looking at those things and making changes as necessary. Right now, you have what I call a fairly low cycle length. I think 85 or 90 seconds. It's very standard, accommodates your pedestrians and fairly heavy movements. But we're running 150, 160-second cycle lengths on larger intersections, which of course means more delay. So in some respects, your current intersection runs fairly snappy, to use a non-engineering term. But thank you.
Okay, Mr. Silvers.
Can you tell me how pedestrian movement in that area, now that we're talking about trying to make Merriam Drive more pedestrian friendly, will affect your program for especially high traffic areas? Like when people come and press the cross button, does that throw off your system, or does the system work the crosswalk light into your program?
Yeah, it's something that we take into consideration everywhere. Anywhere there's any pedestrian or thought of pedestrian, the trick is whether or not we build the pedestrian time into our plan or we don't. Either way, the pedestrian's going to get the time. It's whether or not we can build it in so the traffic isn't affected as such. And we are required by standards to calculate that pedestrian time, geometric speeds, grades, all those things that go into that, so that pedestrians, making sure that they're getting enough time to make that crossing. So I think here we shouldn't have any trouble. We've got a high enough cycle length that we're going to be able to accommodate pedestrians and vehicles both. Thanks.
Do we currently have plans to add 55th and Merriam Drive?
I think the answer is yes.
That's in the current proposal, is to add 55th and Merriam Drive?
Yes, that's currently being coordinated as part of this project.
Right.
To get to the north end of 55th, what do we need to do to that signal to connect it into the OGL system?
Yeah. And then what would it take to add Antioch as well? Is Antioch and Merriam Drive on ours, or is it
I think
Overland Park?
it's on OGL.
I think that is actually a shared, that Overland Park, it happens to be on their server, so to speak, but we work with them regularly, so yeah.
I'm
in fact,
looking at the map and it's on OGL right now.
look
Oh,
at
well.
that.
We're talking about that being
Nice.
possibly a
No,
peanut
it's not. It
roundabout.
stops just short.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not, it's not,
but
it's
it would
Overland
stay
Park.
on OGL.
It's not as on Operation Greenlight, but it's Overland Park's light.
Okay.
So in that case.
It has a black dot.
Yeah, that's when us and Overland Park work together and we say, hey, we've got this situation going. That's the example I just used the other night. We're phoning Sean in Overland Park and they're running their TOC and kicking that plan in.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's black dotted,
Yeah, but it's also not within our purview.
right?
That's what I was getting at, or asking.
Other questions, Mr. Webb?
I think it's important also just to point out that when we talk about the traffic at that signal, really, for the most part, 95% of the time, it operates pretty efficiently. It's the convergence of peak events that really kind of snarls traffic up. When it's rush hour and there's an accident on I-35 and traffic's routing itself down I-35, and there's a train, or there's a train and the buses are coming back, that's really when you have those convergences. That's when traffic stacks. I mean, that's when it is a headache. And this project is not making those times better. This project is not proposing to make those times better. Those times where it's snarled up now, when those convergence of random events occur, because again, we can time when the buses come back. We know when rush hour is, but we don't know when trains, and we don't know when I-35 accidents are going to occur. So it's hard to plan for those things, to set up a system that's going to anticipate them. That's really when traffic gets snarled for the most part. And so we need to make sure that we understand that OGL can plan for a lot of those things, but it can't plan for all of them. Just not to overpromise that OGL can make that, smooth sailing in all circumstances.
Okay, I see no other questions for Mr. Webb. And this may be for the engineer. I do have a question concerning, and I think I read about it, but I guess I just want reaffirmation of, with the design as we are currently looking at this evening, or has been proposed for dropping it down to 2 lanes, what is the expected delay increase that might occur? I mean, is it 20 seconds? Is it 30 seconds? Is it 10 minutes?
I think that's an excellent segue to Jay Aber, WSP, for him to come and talk about exactly about that. Let me get to Jay's slides real quick here, please. There you go, Jay. Just button right there if you want.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Let me move my stuff for you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having me here today. As I mentioned, I'm Jay Aber. I'm a senior traffic engineer with WSP. We were on the team for the Merriam 2040 plan and for the PSP Downtown Merriam Corridor plan. So very happy to be here, answer any questions for you all tonight to help move this important project forward, or decide which way to go with it. We just have some data here, some different things. I don't really have prepared remarks, but threw some things in here, anticipating there might be some questions of delay and other things in here. So I think, Mr. Mayor, your question was about the delay. And so how we do this, we collected traffic data. When we did this, we were in the middle of COVID. Traffic was a little bit different. Things were a bit odd in a lot of different ways. And so we did collect traffic counts along the corridor, but for Merriam Drive and Johnson Drive, we knew that was an important intersection. Things were not, well, at the time, and thankfully, things did not stay that way forever in 2021, 2020, when we were starting this. So we did obtain traffic counts from Mr. Webb from Operation Greenlight from 2018, so pre-COVID traffic counts, more of a typical and probably more back to what we're at today. We do all the modeling, deterministic model from Highway Capacity Manual, and we pull out what we call control delay or average delay, and that's basically, we look at the heaviest 15 minutes of traffic in the day, which is usually in the afternoon, evening rush hour, PM peak hour, 5 to 6 p.m. But then we look at even within that hour, the peak 15 minutes. So there's always a bit of a rush within the rush, and that's what this is based on. So we do have numbers here from the study. What we calculated for existing delay was 37 seconds on average. So on average, as you approach that intersection, the several hundred cars, you're on average going to sit there for 37 seconds. Obviously, some cars are going to sit there for 40, 50 seconds. Other cars are going to sit there for 15 or 20 seconds, but it averages out to that 37 seconds based on the modeling. When we put in the changes, with the changes to the left turn lane, the changes to the right turn lane, that went up to 45 seconds. So about 7 seconds of increased delay at that signal on average.
Okay. Or do you have anything else, or would you like questions at this time?
Yeah, I think I'm just here to answer questions, whatever you have. I can talk through other things if you'd like as well, but I'd most like to answer questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
This is Dave Neal.
Go ahead, Mr. Neal.
I have a few questions. The first one is, does your model, which when you have a left turn lane, and in the existing conditions, we have the center lane that, while technically designed for left turns, but can be used as a relief for the stacking in the main left turn lane at Merriam Drive and Johnson Drive. How does the model treat that? Does the model include does the model allow for the stacking to go in back into that left turn portion of that the middle lane, or does the model assume that it's cut off at where that left turn lane is supposed to end? That's the first question.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that is part of the modeling. And I do have an image up here. I'm not sure if you can see it on the phone, but the answer to your question is yes, it does account for that. And so we use the Synchro model. This is an industry standard model that is the standard way to do the highway capacity manual calculations, because they're very complex. And what you can see in this picture is that those southbound cars, that's Johnson Drive going right to left and Merriam Drive going top to bottom there. So that southbound movement, you can see the cars that are blue are cars that would like to turn left. The cars that are yellow are ones that want to go through, and the cars that are white are ones that want to turn right. And you can see those blue cars are in the left turn lane. There's 4 of them there. That accounts for the somewhat shorter queuing distance that we assumed in the corridor plan. But then you can see there's more of those cars in the through lane. So those are cars that were not able to get into the left turn lane because there was enough cars in the through lane that they couldn't enter it. The existing model did have a longer length for that. You're right on that technically it is illegal to drive down the two-way left turn lane for a significant portion. You can't stack cars 500, 600 feet. You're not legally supposed to do that. Not saying that people don't, not saying that it's not an option, and it's not particularly a huge safety concern in reality, but we did extend that distance for the existing model and shorten it for the proposed model. So that does get into some of that increased delay because we do still have the same number of lanes out there aside from the right turn lane, but the left and through where the predominant volumes are the same. So you would think, well, there's the same number of lanes, the delay should be exactly the same, but part of it is that reduced left turn lane where you do incur a little bit more delay of cars trying to get into it.
Well, if the left turn lane fills up, to me, common sense that it's left turn cars that are not in the left turn lane are going to wait and potentially block the through lane, and also possibly block access to the right turn lane. And I understand that there's been apparently an attempt to quantify that, but I also, along with this, one of the things that I haven't really heard discussed, we now have a multi-year project, the Upper Turkey Creek Flood Control Project, that is going to happen, and that's going to involve construction and construction vehicles and various other disruptions, possibly to the traffic flow along Merriam Drive. Has any of that been factored into any of this? As we are looking at taking out the center lane, which serves, in my view, as a kind of an outlet for the excess left turn traffic. Has there any attempt been made to sort of factor in how that potential construction is going to impact the traffic flow, and thus with that road diet impact the businesses along Merriam Drive?
So I can say from a traffic perspective, no, that's not part of this. What we really focused on was that evening peak hour. That's when we have by far the highest traffic volume on Merriam Drive and on Johnson Drive. And so that's where we focus the analysis. The other hours of the day are typically much lower traffic volume. Most of that construction traffic and other traffic that might occur through there, same thing with deliveries and other things like that, are in those off-peak hours. Certainly that does Those do occur during peak hours as well and could cause a delay, but primarily that kind of traffic would be mid-morning, mid-afternoon. They wouldn't necessarily be doing heavy construction work at 5:15, 5:30 when we see the highest traffic flows. So the answer is no, that hasn't been part of it, but for the reason that we really were focusing on that evening rush hour where we had the most traffic.
Any other questions, Mr. Neal?
Not at the moment for Jay.
Okay. I know Director Dyer already covered this, but I guess I just want to hear it out of your mouth as well, too. But as you head northbound on Merriam Drive there and you want to make a right with either a fire truck or a semi, we can turn onto 58th Terrace and stay in the correct lanes without having to wait for traffic to clear that intersection?
That actually would be a BHC question. I actually have reviewed the email, so if I'm incorrect, Randy can step up here and correct me real quickly. To answer your question, they can make the turn, but as I said previously, they will have to partially move over into the northbound to make that turn, based upon the templates.
And, okay, now I guess I'm not, the
Excuse me,
northbound is
I
what,
apologize.
the northbound is what's
I
confusing
apologize.
me,
Southbound.
okay.
I'm sorry. No, thank you.
Okay.
So northbound vehicle would have to partially go a little bit over into southbound lane to make the turn. Or run over the curb.
Run
That's
over the curb.
exactly right.
Gotcha,
So,
okay.
Apologize for the confusion.
That was confusing me, thank you, okay.
I think Amy has a question.
Okay, yeah, Ms. Ryder, go ahead.
So based on your calculations, the only time in extended delays is for the southbound traffic, correct? Does not include delays to northbound traffic?
Yeah, that's correct. You know, it would depend on, again, when Mr. Webb was talking about the signal timing, there's things you can do to give southbound additional green time. I think if this project moved forward, if this was constructed, that timing would be reviewed and decide if that's the right timing. Is there more green time needed for southbound, which could affect the eastbound and westbound if, you know, there's a limited amount of time, you know, a minute, 2 minutes, and you only get a certain percentage for every movement. I would say that most likely northbound traffic would not be affected at all because the northbound is going to be green at the same time as the southbound. So if you did have traffic issues southbound, what that would do is it probably would actually increase the traffic capacity or traffic flow northbound. There's not nearly as much traffic northbound, and so it doesn't need as much green time to clear all the cars. So you would potentially actually end up with an improvement in traffic flow for northbound traffic, but potentially a small decrease in traffic flow eastbound, westbound. But that'll all be part of that signal timing review after the project was complete.
Shadrich, go ahead.
So you're saying we can make adjustments after we do the project?
Absolutely, and I don't want to put too many words in Mr. Webb's mouth, but I think, you know, a lot of times you mentioned that they'll be working through construction phasing, plans can be made, there can always be reviews, and I think it depends on the agreement with Operation Greenlight, but there's always options to change this and adjust that timing.
Cool. I have a question. In the agenda packet, there's the WSP report on Table 10, the safety benefits for lane reduction. Sorry to spring this one on you. It wasn't in your presentation, but it shows some significant percent changes for historic average annual crashes with the lane reduction. Is that, how much is there to take away from that data? Especially when I'm looking at, for example, like 55th and Merriam Drive, like 58th and Merriam Drive, 58th Terrace and Merriam Drive, Johnson Drive and Merriam Drive. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
You stake your claim on that?
Yeah, so, you know, as Mr. Engel discussed up front, you know, really the purposes, the goals of this project were multimodal connectivity, safety, these other aspects, not necessarily as much traffic flow, improving traffic flow. So safety was a really important part of this. This is also something we talked about through the Merriam 2040 Comprehensive Plan project and making streets safer. What we use for that, so in that table, we have the historic average annual crashes. That's the number of crashes that have historically happened in these areas over the last 5 years of the data that we had. You can see those numbers relatively low, 0.17, 0.67, 1.5. So that means basically a lot of these places have seen maybe one crash in 5 years. So there's not a lot of crashes there happening, but there are certainly crashes out there. So in the entire length of it, we had showed 6.5 crashes over that historic average annual.
And to be clear, that's from Johnson Drive all the way up to Antioch.
Yep.
Okay,
yes, that's
so
correct.
this specific project stops at 55th Street, just for everyone's benefit. So
Yes.
that's 6.5 all the way up to Antioch.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you for that clarification. And then that next column you see it says CMF. That's crash modification factors. So we use the Highway Safety Manual. It has a lot of empirical studies that have studied benefits of different improvements. So looking at the different improvements, not just the lane reduction, but also the traffic calming, the speed humps we've talked about, the speed reduction, that's where we get that number, that crash modification factor. So 0.4 would mean we would expect 40% of the crashes, so a 60% reduction in crashes. So there's different crash modification factors for different segments there based on the different improvements that were proposed. So, crashes are rare events. They're not random, but they have complex causes. So to the best of our ability, the best of our knowledge to predict these things, yeah, I would certainly expect that. But this is expected over a long time period, a lot of crashes, so there's obviously variations in small segments like this. But we do see in general the proposals here for reducing speeds, the speed humps, the lane reduction for a general improvement in safety, both for drivers and pedestrians and cyclists.
So the area in question then up through 55th, it would see, based on this chart, a reduction of Johnson Drive and Merriam Drive is 60%. I'm trying to go in order because they're kind of, okay. Johnson at 58th Terrace and Merriam Drive, a reduction of crashes at 38%. Hawker Drive and Merriam, it stays the same because there had been 0 crashes there. 58th and Merriam Drive, 38% reduction. 57th and Merriam Drive, 38% reduction in crashes. 55th and Merriam Drive, 60% reduction in crashes with the lane reduction to 2 lanes. Okay, just confirming that data. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Jay?
I don't know if it's
Go ahead, Ms. Leahy.
a WSP or Brian or BHC question, but the stacking for the left-bound lane coming south on Merriam Drive that's remaining, I know we merged the through and the right turn, but what is the stacking today compared to the stacking proposed? Is it 8 cars, 10 cars? All right there, perfect.
I'm glad you asked.
It's almost like we planned it.
Well, we know that the queuing is really important. We could talk about delay, we could talk about traffic, so many seconds of delay, these things. Well, queuing is also a really important part of this and something that we calculate as well. So essentially, that's just how long is the length of cars on average at the signal when the signal's red and going through a cycle. We calculate both average queue lengths and we call 95th percentile queue lengths. So average queue length is pretty straightforward. 95th percentile, maybe not as much. That is the 95th longest queue length that would be observed in an indefinite time period. So basically 1 in 20 signal cycles in that peak 15-minute period, which granted you're likely not going to actually have 20 signal cycles in a peak 15-minute period because the signal cycles are a little bit more than a minute. So maybe once every other day you might see this 95th percentile queue length. For all intents and purposes, it's a maximum queue that you could expect to see. So existing today, southbound average queues for that left turn is 153 feet. That's a little over 6 cars. Southbound through is about 5 cars. This is average. And then average for the proposed for the left was not much change, 6 cars. And then the southbound through about 8 cars. And again, some of that is to the fact that the left turn lane's a bit shorter, so, you know, some of those cars are gonna end up in that through lane and extend that queue. And then the 95th percentile is a little bit longer for each one of those.
So how deep is the proposed queue length?
For the left turn
But
lane,
this is what you expect traffic to do, but as designed, how many feet of queuing do we have for left turn?
I believe it is about 125 feet.
So five, is that 5 cars? So we're about 1.5 at most cars, which would clear in a cycle.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and I think an important thing to think about too with this is when we look at the amount of delay that we have, basically, except for extraordinary scenarios like incidents on I-35 or trains or other things like that, for the most part, every car is going to be able to pass through the signal on a single cycle. So you're going to wait through at most one red, one green, and get all the way through. It's not going to be a scenario where it's red, it's green, you're inching towards it, it's red again, you're waiting for the red, then the next green you can get through. So really the way that the queuing is here, all these queued cars would pass through the intersection when it's green.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Dave again.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Is in the queuing in the left lane, all this data, I assume, was when there was no train coming through. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do we know what happens when the trains do come through? As far as obviously you've got the the time of the train, which I saw an average was like 4 minutes or something, 4 minutes or something. So you've got that. If it would stand to reason that you're going to lose some of your cycles of some of the light cycles for southbound traffic and southbound turning right traffic, because that will fill up and will then start blocking, impeding the traffic from that would go south or go south and then turn right at Johnson Drive. Do we, so theoretically, some number of vehicles will have to wait through the train and however long it takes to clear all that traffic if the left turn lane is short enough that traffic gets out into the main southbound lane. Is that not a reasonable sort of possible situation that sounds likely to happen when there are trains?
Yeah, so I think the situation described was basically if we have a lot of cars that want to make a southbound left turn and there's a train there, at some point the queue for the train tracks will extend to the intersection. People will no longer be able to make a left turn, and that left turn queue would extend down Merriam Drive so that anybody who was coming down and wanted to go through or turn right would be blocked by that left turn queue. Is that generally what you meant?
Yes, that's what I was referring to, and we seem to have a fairly high incidence of these trains. And I know we've talked about the possibility of somehow tying the OGL to that, which we don't have the capability of now. It seems to me that with the number of trains, again, I reviewed it, but I don't have it in my head how many trains there would be coming through during the peak 2 hours or peak 15 minutes for that matter. Because that seems like that would absolutely, from my kind of a common sense standpoint, really just tie everything up there.
Yeah,
Is there any quantification of that where we try to look at the number of trains and how that would back things up?
Yeah,
I understand that this is a unique situation that's not easy to model, but I think what we're talking about now is we do have that third lane there, which is a place where cars that are trying to queue for the left turn can park, or not park, but can sit out the time that the train's going through until the intersection can clear through normal traffic patterns or through OGL, some rerouting or change in the sequence for the left turn through the OGL. There's still going to be stopping the southbound traffic that's not trying to turn left.
You are certainly generally correct with that, if that left turn queue is blocked by the train and extends back along Merriam Drive, that would block the ability of drivers who wanted to go straight through the intersection southbound or turn right southbound would be blocked by that. I think that certainly is a situation that is going to be experienced. At the same time, I think that it may only be marginally worse than it is today. We know the train has a major disruption on traffic right now, and technically it is not legal for drivers to queue up for 15 or 20 cars in that two-way left turn lane, and it would be challenging for someone coming southbound when they see a queue of cars and they want to turn left to understand that that left turn queue is waiting on the train and that they need to be in that two-way left turn lane. We generally would like to have idealized drivers and know that they can do those things, but we don't always have that. So if we have 15 or 20 left turn cars queued up, it only takes one of them to drive partially down that queue to block that through lane. So I think if that's an issue today, it will continue to be an issue. It may be nominally worse because there's a little bit less queuing for those left turn cars, but probably not a significant change.
I guess I would say that if you're going to make a left turn and you see a bunch of cars queued up even into that third lane, most drivers are going to queue into that third lane also. But you're right, there may be some that don't pay attention until they're already past it and still try to stop and get into that queue. But it just seems like that would provide some reasonably significant ability to essentially increase the left turn queue if that third lane was still there.
Okay, is that it, Mr. Neal? I've got several hands up here waiting to ask questions as well.
Yeah,
Cut
no,
you
that's
off,
fine.
Okay, Ms. Shadard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say the train tracks have been here since the late 1800s, and the trains are not predictable as much. We know they're going to be there every day at many times per day. They could come during rush hour. They could come when no one's at the light. I drive through that intersection every day, many times a day. David, I don't know how often you do, but anytime there's a train, it becomes a congested mess. I don't know if anything is ever going to change that or make that better other than just a free-for-all, which would be ill-advised as well. I mean, we can't just turn it into Mad Max to try and stop congestion for a train. So I feel like the trains are what they are. Like, using that as an element is something to consider, but if we consider that as, like, if we make a choice based on such an edge case, even though it happens multiple times a day, the conditions could be different at any different point during the day. And this is already a major inconvenience that we live with all the time. I mean, if you live at one of those intersections and you get stuck when, like, especially there's two trains crossing at the same time, which is the worst, or, you know, like it's going real slow, or God forbid it's just stopped or something, you know you're going to be there for a while. So I'm just to be honest, like, God bless the people who live on the east side of I-35 and don't have to deal with it, I guess. But, I mean, I don't think that's a fair point to make in this discussion. That's how I feel about trains.
Can I respond to it since I was I do, I certainly don't cross as often as you do, but we're talking about trade-offs here. If we know we already got a problem, it's counterintuitive that we make that problem worse. And if we are going to make it worse, what is the countervailing benefit that we receive? In the same vein as the lack of trains all the time or predictability is the problem. I would also say that we also don't know how many pedestrians are going to be served, in current conditions or even the near future, based on the types of businesses and stakeholders we have along there that cannot be serviced by the sidewalks we currently have. And I think that the idea of improving things according to the kind of an ideal, which I think we're trying to design to, is good. But what are we losing in return for that? And so I'm just pointing out that we have a bad situation already, and we're looking at ways that we can hopefully make it better. And I've heard some things about this is a once in a generation opportunity. No, it's not. We could decide to change this anytime we want to if we need. And it's going to cost some money, but to say it's a once in a generation, that's only because if we choose it to be that way. And so you can also look at we're making a major change here that a road diet seems to me to make sense oftentimes in situations where you got 4 lanes and you go to 3. You still have that middle lane to do things that need to happen there, but we're taking that out. We're going from
Point taken. Point taken. I think Amy's had her hand up for quite some time.
Yeah, Mr. Neal, I think we understand what you're saying, and it's all obviously taken into consideration. We have several other hands here, so I'd like to call on Ms. Ryder right now.
I was just wanting to point out what Director Dyer mentioned earlier about that middle lane not technically being a left turn lane as it currently is marked. So the proposed changes actually increase the queuing ability for the left turn lane. So really it's not changing, like these changes wouldn't worsen the current issue. It would just make it less possible to perform illegal maneuvers, as it is not technically legal to queue in that left lane or that center lane. Also, as a driver trying to make a southbound left turn, if I did notice traffic being congested on that side, I would bail on the left turn at Johnson Drive and just go down to Shawnee Mission Parkway, as there are several alternative routes to take if need be.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Can we keep moving so we can get through this and hear the people that came to talk to us too?
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
All right, no other questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. All right, Director Dyer, do you have something else you need to present?
No, not this time, Mayor. Let me take a second here to get this stuff down. And if the council don't have any more questions, that's it for staff's presentations, and we'll come back after the comments. Chris will have some concluding comments at that point in time.
Thank you, Director Dyer. Okay, we have a blue, as I hit my microphone one more time, a blue sheet here of sign up, and I'll call these in the order that's been signed up. currently, and if you're not on this list, at the very end, we'll give you an opportunity to speak as well, too. We do have on the, as you will look at the screen up there, a 5-minute timer. There is a 5-minute limit on what you can say. So we don't have a big hook that's going to pull you off, but we will be adhering to that 5-minute timer
You don't
very
have
seriously.
to take 5 minutes.
It's okay to take.
Yeah.
Oh,
five-
no,
five
you
is the
don't.
limit, not the minimum.
Thank you, Mr. Leahy. You do not have to spend 5 minutes. Maximum would be 5 minutes. Oh, the question is, there were email or questions that, or comments that were made. Are we going to include those in the record or not? People, and some of those people may be here. So at this point, I think let's proceed with who's here on this list. And then, we can address if there's somebody that maybe has already emailed you and had comments itself. But Mr. Anton Krutz, if you'd come forward and please state your name and address for the record.
Anton Kreutz, owner of KC Strings, 5842 Merriam Drive. I assume everyone has, Chris made a copy of this report. Great. I'd like to first submit this for a public record, number one. Since David Neal made most of my case really fantastically and better than I can, I'd like to just continue Chris Engel's viewpoint at 30,000 feet, because I think it's good to kind of step back. And let's take a look at what's beneficial and what's detrimental for Merriam, right? Because that's what the city council here is about. And I think the city council has a wonderful professional attitude, has a very positive view of what they want to do for Merriam, really great synergy. Part of having great synergy, a byproduct, is sometimes you overlook opposing opinions, and because you're barreling toward this, toward this great goal. It was said that Merriam businesses knew about it. I didn't know about it. I went to every other business there other than True Auto, Dave Carroll. He knew about it, but almost nobody else did. And I went to other businesses, nobody else did. And as I mentioned in my first time up here, that every time I mentioned that at the intersection between Hawker and Johnson Drive, they're going to take out the middle lane, everyone looked at me as if I'm telling them they're going to take out the stoplight. So the several centuries of experience of every business owner in Merriam immediately knew it was a bad idea. So there has to be something to that, And when we're looking at what is beneficial for Merriam, I think all the other plans definitely could be beneficial. You have the residential living, kind of smart city concepts, moving Merriam Drive. It depends on how it's done. If it's done transparently with businesses involved, people involved, that's great. It could be beneficial. The proposal of north of Hawker on Merriam Drive, I think it's also can work out. The 2 lanes there, I think the traffic analysis where they said no significant change in traffic expected, I think that's completely valid there. You might have to work with businesses because some of them like that middle lane of there's delivery trucks and other things that stop in, and no matter what business is there, they're going to need delivery trucks stopping somewhere. But it's still, everything's workable. The issue here is what's happening south of Hawker, between Hawker and Johnson Drive. And it's really not a values issue of politics. It's a values issue of this is a very busy intersection, and it's made exponentially more complex by the fact that there are 4 potential left turn lanes going south, 4 potential left turns going north. And I understand, to Amy's point, that technically it's not legal. The reality is that's what everyone is using that middle lane for, is to take a left. And it makes it simple for traffic flow to go past both south and north. And it makes it safer. To the point that Whitney was making, that 2 lanes are safer, this is an inaccurate comparison, because if you take just a normal traffic and you slow it down, whether you make it from 4 to 2, or 3 to 2, if you slow down any traffic, it's going to be less accidents. So it's not so much, I think, the 2 lanes that's making it safer. It's the fact that you're just slowing down traffic. So let's be accurate in what is making it safer. It's not the 2 lanes, it's the slower traffic.
You have 1 minute left, Mr. Cruz.
Okay, so going on, just from the report, just a few things that basically, if there's 2 lanes, you can't flow 2 traffic. If there's accidents or anything else, you can't have emergency vehicles go through. Also, when the traffic study was done, buses weren't going through there as well. So there are a lot of issues that I think there was inaccurate data and inaccurate models made for this. And again, David Neal spoke to a lot of this. And I don't believe that it's going to be safer. I think it is going to be more traffic congestion, and it's going to be less safe for the vehicles there overall because of no middle lane for traffic flow to be able to smoothly go around the people waiting in the left turn lanes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You're right on time. Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Next person on the list is Rick Williams. Mr. Williams, if you come forward, give your name and address for the record.
I'm Rick Williams. I've been doing business in beautiful downtown Merriam for 36 years. From 9214 West 58th Terrace is my address. I'm the current acting president of the Downtown Merriam Partnership, and the mission statement for the Downtown Merriam Partnership is to, the purpose of the Downtown Merriam Partnership is to ensure continual revitalization effort and partnership with the business owners, residents of the city, and city staff and city government. Unfortunately, at the end of my last stint as president of Downtown Merriam Partnership, I felt that door close hard and stay that way. I hope we can renew it, because what's happened here is I took a little folder thing and went down the street and dropped it off at a bunch of different businesses and said, have you noticed that your business is no longer on this map? Well, back the first time we did our revitalization of downtown Merriam, that's what got the Downtown Partnership started, because all of our businesses disappeared in the plan. And I'm hoping that rather than having this continue that way, that we get in communication and that you all get down to downtown Merriam, and instead of wandering around and looking at the beautiful streets or whatever, come in and talk to the people, because that's who you need to communicate with to develop that kind of cooperative effort. I saw you guys down there walking around, but nobody stopped to talk to anybody. Okay? All it takes is a conversation and an idea about direction, and to communicate to people what is or expected to happen, and things will get better. So let's work together. Pay attention to the people who are down there. Don't ignore the people who have been there since before the current system, which works better than what was there before, which was 4 lanes with parking on both sides of the street, was in existence. Some of us old farts know a little bit about stuff because we've been there to observe it for a very long time. And every one of these businesses that's sitting back here is concerned with this is about their longevity and survival. So it's important to them. It should also be important to you, because you're trying to develop improved communications, improved this and that, but if you don't talk to each other, it doesn't happen. And please don't not listen to what people have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay, the next person up is Ruben Kazmaier. Please give your name and address, sir, for the record.
Yep, Ruben Kazmaier, 5800 Hadley. So I'm on that east side of I-35. I don't have to deal quite as often with the railroad tracks, mostly just when I'm going west. So I've lived in Merriam for about 10 years now, and I live in Merriam. I host a semi-weekly bike ride in Merriam when the weather's nice, so not so much now, but we're looking forward to having more, bike and transportation infrastructure, pedestrian access, that sort of thing throughout the city. So I'm really excited personally for, all of the forward-looking planning that Merriam's doing right now with the downtown, with the former Kmart site, that sort of thing. I have been through that intersection most of the time. It works really well, and it seems like the only times that it doesn't work really well are when the train's there, and I don't think there's anything that that Merriam can do about that. Yeah, and so I'm excited to be able to spend more time downtown, spend more of my money in Merriam. I look at things that that Mission's doing or that Shawnee's doing, and I'd like to have some sort of similar amenities and similar places to go here in Merriam. So,
Thank
thanks.
you, Mr. Kosmeyer. Okay, next person up on the list to be Dan Carr. Just give your name and address for the record.
Dan Carr. I represent 5700, 5702, and 5704 Merriam Drive. We've been in business there for about 26 years. Most of you know me as Santa Claus. Unfortunately, none of you have ever been into my building except Mr. Bob Pape and asked me what my opinions were on this. Unfortunately, I have attended all the meetings that you had prior to up to this point. I have given a lot of suggestions. Unfortunately, I don't believe many of them have been heard. I wish that you all would come into the businesses, meet everybody down on Merriam Drive. There's a lot of good people. I think I've been through the 4 lanes to 3 lanes. I don't know how you're going to do it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Okay, next person up would be Randy Mixdorf. Just give your name and address for the record.
My name is Randy Mixdorf. I actually live at 3004 DeGroff Way in downtown Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm a bike commuter. So I actually bike from downtown KCMO to Lenexa for work, and this is the path that I take. So I was really excited to hear about the potential improvements along this way, just to make my commute safer and all the people that I see commuting as well to have a safer commute to get to work and to get to other parts of the city. And this is really the only corridor that connects downtown KCMO to this area. There's really no other good way for me to get here unless I go 30 minutes outside of my way to cut through Brookside, South, Bannister, and come all the way around. So this is really the most direct path for people to get where they need to go. I know there's a trail back behind these businesses, and people have said, why don't you just use the trail? That's really meant for pedestrians. It's really meandering, it's really bumpy, so if you're trying to commute to work, you need to make sure your computer doesn't fall off the back of your bike. I've had those concerns a couple of times. And it's also just treed on both sides, which is a really great experience for people. But if you're cycling alone really early in the morning or late in the evening, that's not a place I feel comfortable cycling as part of my commute. So I prefer to be on the road than just to be more visible. And I would say, so I live near 31st Street in downtown KCMO. And if anybody has driven that recently, we've had our lane reduction. Went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. And it has drastically decreased the speeds in that area, and people are out walking again because the traffic is slower. There's a lot of pushback from my neighborhood for that decrease in the lanes. People are not happy about it, but we've had so much good feedback from what it's done to the neighborhood by having that decrease. So I'm very in support of this plan, and I hope it moves forward.
Thank you, Ms. Mixdorf. Okay, next up would be, looks like County Commissioner Chair Mike Kelly.
Well, thank you,
Your
Mayor.
name and address, sir.
Mike Kelly, 5700 Roland Drive, Roland Park, Kansas. Mayor, Commissioner, or council members, I've had a long day with the commission, so forgive me if I'm ineloquent, and I'll try to be brief, but to Mr. Engel's point, it's a special night. For the last 5 years of my life, on Mondays, my evenings have been taken, so this is my opportunity to come here to Merriam and maybe just take a moment of privilege and say thank you all very much. Your work has been incredible, and it's noticed outside of the city of Merriam. Yesterday, your mayor, Mayor Pape, did a fantastic job at the Northeast Johnson County Commissioners are Northeast Johnson County Chamber of Commerce's State of the City's address, lauding some of the great things that Merriam's doing. I believe it was it 6 grant programs that Merriam has, or maybe a couple more than that?
10, yeah.
It was 10. Well, I was able to see 6 on a quick search of the website, but 10, that's even more incredible. And I appreciate that Merriam is a leader. I mean, you were the leader, you had the first library in the county, you had the first hospital, you hosted the community college, and I think that tradition continues today, not only in the business community in Merriam, but also in some of the innovative ways that this governing body continues to lead and that others have an opportunity to follow. It's one of the fun things I always found about Northeast Johnson County is that we can be inspired by each other to continue to provide better services and opportunities for our residents and our businesses. And so I want to just take this opportunity, give you all a minute to take a deep breath and thank you and recognize that your work is recognized, it is valued, it is appreciated, and look forward to the various ways in which the county can continue to partner with the city of Merriam to best serve our residents. So with that, I'll just say thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. All right. Next person up, it looks like would be Heather Owsley. And your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Heather Owsley, 6800 Farley. Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at public comment tonight. I am here to speak in support of the plan. As a resident of Merriam, I'm speaking in my individual capacity tonight, but of course my professional and civic capacities inform my decision-making process. So I want to start by saying thank you so much for your service. The last 2 years have been quite the ride for those of us in public service. And so the fact that you're still here and sitting at the dais is a testament to you, and our community appreciates you. On that note, I think what I am excited most about this plan is that it is a pedestrian-centric plan. It's exciting. It looks good. As a resident of Merriam, I am excited to have a downtown that is vibrant, that is inviting for walking with your kids. The lighting will make it safer. I think the street parking provides safety mechanisms for people on the sidewalk because it gives that barrier between the pedestrians and the drive. For the folks who are traveling south on Merriam Drive to go east on Johnson Drive, that is a predicament that could probably be avoided by taking Antioch or perhaps going further down and going around, so as to make the experience in downtown Merriam safe for pedestrians and to spend their money there. I walk the Creek Trail, have for quite some time. I also know that it connects to downtown. But I frequently stop at Johnson Drive and don't go further than that because it does seem to have the downtown feel, the business district feel. It does not seem open or inviting to pedestrians. And so changing the face of the district, looking at those pictures on the city's website, I think it looks really fabulous. And I'm impressed with the data-driven process, including Mark. They are the consummate professionals. We're very lucky in our region to have Mid-America Regional Council. The Planning Sustainable Places grant, I think, is also a nice feather in the cap for Merriam in working with Overland Park and being able to incorporate the changes with the floodplain zone and the money from Congress. Like the timing of all of this coming together is certainly unique. The number of players at the table to make it happen between Mark, congressional money that seemed to have appeared magically overnight, to fix a floodplain issue that has been plaguing us for at least 20 years, if my recollection is correct. So combining that with the growth that's happening in the old Kmart location, the new community center, the soon-to-be new library at the community center, we could be more than just the place where IKEA is for when people come to visit us, and I think that is very exciting. So I appreciate the work of you guys. I appreciate the citizens who came to speak tonight and who participated in all of the planning process to get us here, and I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owsley. Okay, and next up would be Dan Leap. Of course, name and address for the record. Thank you.
Dan Leap, 5848 Merriam Drive. So a lot of business owners are here to talk about the street. I am the primary resident of Merriam Drive and Johnson Drive intersection. I live above Guitar Lamp. And so I just want to ask you guys to not change the street from Johnson Drive back to Hawker. The lanes need to stay the same as they are. We need the right-hand turn lane. We need the left lane, which is also the straight lane. And we need to leave it just how it is from Johnson Drive to Hawker. I also have a couple questions for these experts. I use loosely that term. What's going to happen when the car hauler comes to 5745 Merriam Drive, which is lean auto, and currently parks in the center lane, which works okay, and unloads cars, and it's there for quite a while. And then the same car hauler, or a different one, comes to 5820 Merriam Drive, which is nationwide auto. And other people get deliveries down there too. And so that middle lane needs to stay because it's used. You know, how's people going to get around if that's parked in one of the two lanes when you guys just make two lanes? I guess nobody has an answer. The next question is, how many tickets have been written for people to the wait in the turn lane that go all the way back to Hawker sometimes? Has there been tickets? People say it might not be legal. Well, I haven't ever seen any tickets written there, and I've sat there a lot waiting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Okay, that was concludes the people that I currently have signed up on the list. That, like I said at the beginning, if you didn't know there was a sign up, I'll entertain anyone in the audience now that would like to come forward. Okay, sir, at the back, you raised your hand first, so you're up. Name and address for the record.
Hi there. I'm Daniel Molina, 8008 West 64th Street. Forgive me, I've been burning the candle at both ends with a newborn at home, so I'm going to stick to the script that I wrote a little bit before. But thanks for this opportunity, first of all, to voice my support of the Downtown Merriam project. More specifically, like a few others here tonight, I'd like to share my perspective as a cyclist. And as someone who's traveled through the area on more than one occasion without the protection of a car's 2 tons of steel. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment real quick to just acknowledge the concerns of the local businesses petitioning against this project's current shape. Between the pandemic's economic slowdown and an economy focused more and more on scale, small business owners face some pretty unprecedented headwinds right now. For an example of what they're up against, you just need to look over at the big box stores sitting across from them on the flip side of I-35. It's here in this part of town, too, that I think a pedestrian's and a cyclist's point of view are really telling. If I'm on a bike, I avoid that area at all costs, like my life depended on it. A string of traffic lights makes for impatient drivers, and a tangle of turn lanes really makes navigating the area on foot or on bike feel a little bit more like playing a game of Frogger. Surprisingly, the first time I biked through downtown Merriam, I felt shades of this same sort of restlessness, even if it was on a little smaller scale. So instead of a smooth and safe ride, I felt impatient drivers breathing down my neck. And I have a sneaking suspicion why. When you enter a roadway almost exclusively catering to cars, and they're given as many lanes as possible, you're really encouraging those drivers to see a street as a means to an end and not a place in its own right. And just for the record, I'm guilty of doing this all the time when I'm driving. But, you know, in a lot of contexts, this makes perfect sense. But I'd reason that a charming downtown full of local businesses isn't one of those contexts. One of the reasons why I started biking more and more since moving to Merriam more than a decade ago is it gives me a better sense of place. It deepens my appreciation for my community. I discover spaces and the people behind them instead of everything just whizzing by in a blur. This perspective shift is why I tried taking my 2-year-old son on regular rides as well. I want him to feel rooted in a place. Which brings me back to the plan at hand. Last week, my wife and I, as I mentioned, welcomed our second child into the world, a baby girl. Already, I find myself daydreaming about family outings to the new library and other fun spots around town. I believe this project, as it currently stands, brings us one step closer to making downtown Merriam a true destination, one of those destinations, and not just the fastest way to get somewhere else. And from all the designs I've seen so far, it's a place that I'll feel excited and safe bringing my family to, whether it's on 4 wheels or 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marlena, and congratulations on your new addition. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to come forward and speak at this time? Okay, sir. Billy, come on forward and give your name and address for the record.
Thank you. I'm Billy Crone, and I come here on the special night from my beautiful Merriam home at 6633 Wed Street. I've been very involved with the city since 2015 when I first started coming to our city council meetings. I've served on a number of committees as well, including the 5701 committee currently. That's the address of the former community center, and my committee collected public input and made recommendations on how to best utilize that parcel of land in years past. 5701 will be reconvening this year, and I want some of my neighbors who came here this evening to come meet me afterwards so I can represent their values at 5701's coming meetings, open meetings later this year. I participated in a number of other ways, so much so that the City of Mend called me in last year for a little sit-down about just how much I do participate. It was said I was probably one of the most involved residents, if not one of the top 3. And so it blew my mind that the first time I heard about removing a dedicated turn lane and the elimination of the middle that functions as a left queue was last week when the ink was nearly dry. I think it is as facetious as it is offensive to imply that the values of our established downtown businesses are contrary to the public good, especially in this example. Our businesses are concerned with gridlock on our streets. Next to the single busiest rail crossing in the whole state of Kansas. That's a little tidbit that I learned in this very room a couple years ago. I think gridlock is a pretty universal concern. Nobody wants a traffic disaster, and frankly, it's not safe either. I see this as a symptom of a condition that I've come to call vision in a vacuum. It reminds me of the plight of my neighbors in West Vernon Heights. A couple years ago, the city had a highly designed, advanced, engineered, and even funded plan to install sidewalks, but it was missing one key detail. That was the will of the people who lived in that neighborhood. And it took 2 council members knocking on every door in that neighborhood, much to the ire of staff, to put brakes on that, to slow it down. Listen to the experts, we were told. Follow the city's plan. Trust the traffic study we hear now. No. Trust our neighbors. They don't want to give up the dedicated turn lanes, and it's just false to say we have to do that to improve safety. If we need more space, we could reuse that land from the wind chime. My neighbors behind me could raise their hands if they prefer that, or skipping some of the bike lane only nearest the intersection, or maybe skipping the sign arch that would consume valuable speed on both feet on both sides of the street. There's other options here. We can't write off our traffic as just a confluence of worst-case scenarios when those worst-case scenarios happen twice every workday. It's of little value in this room for staff to repeat that it's not legal to queue in the center lane. You, City Council, write the laws. I will respond to Whitney's doubts that anything could improve the traffic when trains cross. I'll just say we know something that can make it worse. So let's not do that. Thank you. There are many ways to keep our dedicated turn lanes and center lanes center lane. The neighbors and businesses owners who came here tonight want to keep them. They're not cells on a spreadsheet. They're our constituents, your constituents, and they took time out of their day on short notice to be here. Sorry. I was updating my words as I was listening to input from everyone else earlier. Don't call them illegal for queuing in the center when the city allowed the official queue to remain inadequate for decades. Change the markings. I don't think anyone is asking you to trash the whole plan either, okay? That's a false argument. I just ask that you to listen to your constituents today and modify it a little bit. Don't give up 1 inch of our existing capacity at Johnson. Fix the markings. And most importantly, direct staff to be more prompt in the future in announcing the shortcomings and trade-offs of future city plans so that we don't need another special meeting to put the brakes on something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cronin. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to go? Please go forward. Thank you. Your name and address for the record.
My name is Shelley Plakowski. I own a commercial property and a business at 6142 Merriam Drive. I am a founding member of the Downtown Merriam Partnership, past vice president for many years, president for many years. I'm a founding member of the Turkey Creek Car and Motorcycle Show, and I'm a founding member of the Flags for Freedom. So I'm a little bit involved with downtown and downtown revitalization. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I've got a tickly throat. So the biggest concern to me is the traffic and the businesses that will be adversely affected by the traffic mess that's going to be made even worse. I'm a little bit concerned also, and maybe I should ask every staff member, mayor, and every council member here, who has been in to speak to the people that sit day in, day out, and watch what goes on Merriam Drive with the traffic? Has anybody? Anybody been down and talked to Anton Kreutz at Casey Strings, or Dave Carroll at True Auto, or Dan Leap, or any of the businesses down there? Is anybody? I'm guessing no. Okay. So that seems a little bit irresponsible to me, that we don't have direct communication from city government or city staff with the people who are going to be the most affected by all of this. It's going to affect their businesses. It's not going to affect mine. I'm way down at the south end. Not yet, anyway. It will eventually when there are wrecks, or I shouldn't say eventually, but from time to time, when there's a wreck on I-35 and there's a train across Johnson Drive, and the traffic goes all the way to try to get to Shawnee Mission Parkway, and I can't pull out of my parking lot to get onto the street to go one way or another. These people in downtown Merriam have lived through decades of flooding. They've hung in there. They've lived through it. They deserve a little bit of loyalty in return from the city. And I would just like everyone to consider that. There have been a lot of good points made tonight. There have been a lot of dumb points, in my opinion. But we need to have some more discussion. And there should be no rush ever to proceed with a project of this size and this much importance to the well-being of Merriam Drive businesses who have been there for decades. Should not be a rush and then have to backpedal on it and cost a lot more money. So please, everybody, just slow your roll and let's talk about this. Let's really have some discussion. It was pointed out to me that someone had said to one of the business owners, well, this is all public information and you could have come to these public meetings. Do you think small business owners are paying attention to what's going on Merriam's website from week to week or month to month? Sorry, we don't have time for that. But a reach out from the city to these businesses would have been really, really nice. Again, it doesn't affect me, except that it does. I have a lot of time and years and efforts invested into Merriam Drive, and a lot of these business owners do, property owners, and they should be given a little bit better consideration, I think, than they have been. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms.
Don't cut me off, Mayor.
You
I have
got
29 seconds left.
You watching the okay.
Yeah. No, I
thought you were
wasn't, but I saw you watching it.
Well, I know, and I thought you were wrapping up, so thank you for your help, though, the city. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward this time? Okay. Yeah, just as a clarification, I know that people are asking the council questions, and typically we don't get in a discourse of interaction on answering some of those questions. Please seek them out afterwards if you do have, want to talk to them about whether they've been there and spoke to people or not spoke to people. I know there's been meetings where they have been spoken to, and it's just not a time right now for that one-on-one interaction between the council and the audience. But do seek out your council people at the end of this meeting itself if you do want to talk to them in addition to that. So I understand people want to ask questions now, but that's not how this operates. Go ahead. I give you name and address for the record.
My name is Julie Baker. I am a commercial business, have a commercial business, and I Baker's Marble there in 5718 Merriam Drive, and I live in Merriam, 10,009 70th Street. We have been here for 30 years, supporting Merriam, both living and our businesses and our commercial property. And we were never notified about what is going on. And of the plans, we're not even going to be here in 20 years. It is very disheartening that we were never notified of what was going on. And when you all were walking, I agree with everybody else here. You should have came by, popped your head in, said hello, introduced yourself, seen what we were doing. We have been here for 30 years and have not met anybody on the council. We don't have time to come to these meetings because we are working to be able to support our business, our small business, so we can support our family, pay our taxes to be able to take care of everybody in this room. So we would love to be at these meetings, but we are busy. So very disappointed that we were not notified. So I think that everybody in here should learn from this, all of us, to do better, because we have supported you. We have been here for you. We just expect you all to be there for us. That's all I got to say.
Thanks, Ms. Baker. Okay, anyone else in the audience? Sir, come on forward. I'm going to have to go to the back of the page to write this down. Name and address for the record.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Alan Herford. I'm the owner of Johnson County Automotive. I own 5829 Kessler as well as 5837 Kessler. I don't have anything prepared tonight. I just want to kind of tell you how it feels. I always dreamed of being a business owner. That dream took on reality 20 years ago when I became the owner of Johnson County Automotive down here. 7 years ago, that extended to being the owner of the property. In the last couple of days, it's become apparent to me how quick 2040 is going to be here. It seems like it's a long way in the future, but when you start looking at your business and plans, boy, it's closer than you think. It's especially close when you see that you're not there in the plans for your city that you've been supporting for 20 years. So what I want you all to understand from a business owner is how it feels when a fellow business owner comes in to tell me that I'm not in the plans for Merriam in 2040. Just as this lady has just said, I've worked 7 days a week very often for the last 20 years to pay my bills, pay my taxes, pay my employees, hopefully at the end of the day have a profit. If I wasn't standing right here right now, I'd probably be in my office at the shop working. That's the reason why I probably was unaware of any of these meetings happening. I don't know anything about traffic. Quite frankly, I don't know if I'm for or against this. But what I do know is it feels like there's a reason why I am not informed as to why I'm not going to be here in 2040. That is not a good feeling when you've worked as hard as I have to have a successful business in this city. So that's all I'll leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herford. And just as a point of clarification in reference to the 2040 plan, which has been referenced here several times this evening, that is nothing that's written in stone, and it's not necessarily something that's going to occur. It was a vision of a committee that set and try to come up with things that could happen in downtown Merriam. Whether that actually happens or not, obviously, is that would take time to even see if that was to come to fruition. But I do understand your point, Mr. Herford. And I think I saw a hand back here in the back corner. Anybody else that would like to come forward? Okay. Your name and address for the record.
Christina Stokes, live at 1020 West 55th Street. Oh, I hate public speaking, but...
Yeah, and speaking of the mic, Ms. Stokes.
So, like, the biggest gripe that I've kind of been hearing around the room is, well, first of all, communication with the business owners. That would be cool, just, like, send a note, like, stop and talk, whatever. But the second thing is the traffic congestion due to a train. The traffic congestion is not going to go away. When that happens, it's going to be congested. But what I want to point out is that the type of traffic driving through that area should change due to these changes that are being proposed. That it's not, Merriam's not going to simply be a throughway, but a destination. So, like, people aren't going to be driving by and waving, but stopping and shopping. So, but if the biggest concern is a, center turn lane, then maybe we should keep the center turn lane and get rid of the parking spaces along the side or something. I mean, there are different ways to skin this cat, but I don't know. I think in the end, it's going to be congested one way or the other. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Ms. Stokes. Anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward? Okay, I think, Mr. Crone, you already had your 5 minutes, so I'm sorry I have to cut you off on that one, but go ahead. Please come forward and give your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Barbara Carr, 5700 Merriam Drive. Dan and I started a business 25 years ago. We didn't have to come to Merriam. We could have been to Shawnee, because that's where we live. But we chose the city of Merriam. At the time, we had communication with everybody. But now, nobody came, nobody called, we weren't informed, and then the new plan, probably 90% of the businesses that are here representing the downtown Merriam aren't even there. You've shut us down. You've shut us under the rug. So how are you proposing to get new businesses to trust any of you or trust the city of Merriam if you do that to the established ones now? Because if you think that they aren't going to know about it, you're wrong. They will. We pay our taxes. We're there now. We're there why you have the traffic. And you want to make it worse? You want to get rid of us? That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Ms. Carr. Okay, anyone else in the audience who wants to come forward at this time? Come forward, sir. Name and address for the record.
Christian Sinclair, 4960 Park Street, Shawnee, Kansas. Thanks for having this meeting tonight. I agree with many of the people that the traffic is going to be the worst when it's with the train, and people are going to blame the train. They're not going to say there's a center lane or there should have been 10 feet longer or 10 feet shorter. It's going to be blamed on the train, and they're going to sit on their nice comfy sofa in their steel box and listen to the radio or look at their phone and wait. That will keep happening for 20 years. It's been happening since we've had the iPhone, so they're looking at the phone thing. So I know this area because I bike this area. I've only recently started biking this area because I commute from Shawnee to Fairway, 9.4 miles each way. I've really enjoyed the park through through Merriam. It's gorgeous. I see a lot of potential there. Being a Shawnee resident, I saw what they did with Neiman. Neiman's great. There's lots of stuff coming in there. They had an option to make Johnson Drive a little bit more narrow, bring more businesses there, make it a little slower, better for pedestrians, make people want to come there as a destination. Merriam has that potential. Don't be afraid of traffic. Traffic will always be there, but the traffic will change when people start riding their bikes, when people start biking, when people come there for events. They're going to see Merriam as a different place. I already see Merriam as a different place because I bike through there, and it's great. My family goes to Casey Strings. I've been to Linden Automotive, Watts Up. I go to the businesses there. I see more of the businesses there. I see there's restaurants there, like Pulgarcito. So I want to go to these places. It's right next door. If we can connect Shawnee and Merriam and make these great, wonderful downtowns that people want to go to, that people want to live in, there's so much potential there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. Anyone else in the audience? Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Sorry, you've already... 29 seconds. 29 seconds, okay. 29 seconds, that's it.
29 seconds. So Merriam Drive is mostly an industrial area, and it is also a destination area. It's, even though it becomes a throughway because of wrecks on I-35 and people avoiding that, it becomes a throughway, but it's a destination in mostly industrial area. Let's don't forget that. It's been that way forever and probably will be for a very long time. Just a reminder.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Plakowski. Okay, I hate to keep asking, but is there any other hands out there that's going to be raised? Raise them now or forever keep them by your side. So, okay, I see no additional hands, so we'll close out the part of the public questioning or comments section. I guess I'll turn this over to Mr. Engel in reference to going forward with final questions, maybe.
Sure. Well, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I mean, I think this has been great conversation. I think this has been great in that it illustrates the point that depending on the perspective that you're looking from, it's easy to find value in all of these opinions. That is why what we have to do tonight is not easy. It's why it's politics. We have to decide what values are going to supersede others when it comes to this issue. We certainly can delay. We don't have to make a decision tonight, but I would tell you not making a decision doesn't make it any cheaper. But that's just a fact. It's not a contingency. It's just simply that's a fact. I think that it's important when we look at this, if we look at this from a value perspective, that we have to fall back on what's important to the city, to all of the people of the city. Our businesses are absolutely important. They are the backbone of downtown. A lot of great points have been made about the fact that, I mean, there's some industrial kind of feel to it. It's a little bit grittier, that there's not a whole lot of pedestrians that go down there now. But as Mr. Dyer pointed out before, this is a street project. It's a street project that is that does not preclude what's could happen. So the 2040 plan is a concept. We're not building the 2040 plan tomorrow. We're just simply saying, if we've got to redo the street, should we redo the street in a way that doesn't allow that to occur or makes it a little bit easier for that to occur? We had lots of input from folks. We had people that were invited to be on these committees that chose not to be, but they were invited to be on these committees. We had people that showed up to these committee meetings and made suggestions that we took some of their suggestions. Did we take all of them? No. But we took the ones and we modified the plans based upon the input we had from the people that showed up. We sent out letters for the meetings to all of the folks downtown. We have the Highlights magazine that went out. It goes out to every single address. And I know I've talked to people downtown that have the highlights. It talked about downtown. We created a website that's called merriam.org/downtown. We had an email address that's called downtown@merriam.org. Some of the folks that were mentioned as not being informed were on the committee. They chose not to show up. They were invited. That doesn't mean everyone knew. We did not reach out to every single person downtown. We invited the chair of the Downtown Merriam Partnership, which apparently, what it sounds like, was not doing, at least from the perspective of some of the businesses, what they were supposed to be doing. But they represent some downtown businesses. That person has been on almost every single one of these committees. I don't know what they communicate with the businesses, but they were there as a representative for a handful of those businesses. So to say that we haven't reached out to every single person, sure, we could say that that's accurate. But to say that we haven't been mindful that the businesses would be impacted by some of these studies, I don't think is an accurate statement. Again, this is a street project. We're not building walls. We're not saying that you can't operate here anymore. We're not saying we don't want you. I haven't heard that in any of these processes. It's simply a street project. And we need to do the street project sometime soon. And it would be a shame to spend all of the money to do the street project and not get it right. So clearly we have some competing values, some competing issues of what is important to different people in the room, different people in the community. That's where you're going to have to make a decision on what you'd like us to do. So the way that I see it is we have three options. I mean, I guess we have four if we want to delay, but we'll need some direction on what we're doing during delay. First option is, like most things, we go forward and we look for opportunities to improve. I would point out that operating downtown, from what I'm hearing, is not always convenient. Downtown is not convenient. We've got a creek. The creek floods. The creek makes us pay for flood insurance if we have a business down there. We've got the train. The train's loud, it's dirty, it's gritty, it slows down traffic. We've got I-35. I-35, it divides the community in half. When the highway came in, it took people off of Merriam Drive and it put them on I-35 so they'd bypass downtown. But in all of those things, when we've looked at them, the city has made an investment to try to mitigate those things. I-35, we put all of our stoplights on Operation Greenlight in the hopes that we could mitigate some of that random occurrence of accidents and traffic. With the trains, we can't elevate the trains. We looked at elevating the trains to make it more convenient. We can't. There's not enough room. The geometry doesn't work. We made them quieter. We added some, I mean, it's something. We invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it so we don't have to listen to horns all up and down the street. The creek, we're spending tens of millions of dollars to try to mitigate the impacts that the creek has. So we don't have to pay, we don't have to worry about flooding, hopefully, and we don't have to pay for flood insurance. I mean, I think the city continues to make investments in downtown to try to make things more convenient in an environment that isn't convenient sometimes. So I want to make sure that we don't lose track of that. We may get a bad rap for that, but I think that the council and councils past have made good investments in downtown when we've had to make investments down there. This is just the next opportunity to do that, and it's a street project. We can do that, we cannot do that. We can either do it as designed and seek opportunity, feedback to improve. We can do nothing from Hocker to Johnson Drive has been recommended by several of the businesses. Just leave it as it is. You know, we can go in and just do a mill and overlay. That's an option also. That option would certainly save us money because we wouldn't do all of the other things. We could also kind of find that compromise, which is to extend the 3-lane profile some measure to the north. If we're going to do that, we're going to lose on-street parking, both projected on-street parking, those 6 spots on the east side, plus likely the 4 spots that are existing on the west side. So I don't know if that's going to be viewed as a compromise by all parties involved. But that's, as I see it, really the options that you have. I don't see that there's another option in there. We certainly, again, can pause and delay and decide to make a decision somewhere down the road. There'll be consequences for that, certainly. But I don't know from an engineering perspective if there's any, as I shared at the beginning, any new information. I mean, I think you've heard the perspectives and the values of the businesses, valid as they are. As I said from the beginning, those are valid points. If your perspective is from a small business, those are very, very valid points. But those are just some of the points that you need to take into consideration when you make a decision. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you have. We do have experts that are here to answer any additional technical questions about delay or geometry or anything that they might be able to answer. If there's no other questions, I'll get out of the way and let you
Do we have any
folks
questions for Mr.
deliberate.
Engel? Any questions on this side from Mr. Engel? Oh,
Are we?
yeah, Mr. Silvers, go ahead.
Yeah, so Mr. Neal brought up some points I think rang true to some of the business owners that are here. And one of the things that stuck out to me is when he asked if our plan can change down the road after the redesign has been done.
Sure, certainly.
And if that's the case, would it be feasible to continue with the design as proposed and see if there's a stacking issue, see if there's a traffic issue, see if the GO light system can help with the redesign, and then remove some of the barriers that prevent us from having 3 lanes going all the way back to Hawker if a serious issue occurs with this design.
Sure.
Because I think what we're all here trying to do is figure out what's best for the city of Merriam, the businesses, the citizens, in trying to get the traffic flow to work, as well as keeping and adding parking spaces for our businesses. It's true, I have not been down and I have not spoken to all the businesses in downtown. I have spoken with Dan Leap. Unfortunately, my message didn't go through to him tonight to answer his question. But I do see the downtown businesses as the foundation for our downtown, obviously. And I don't want to do anything that's going to affect them adversely, but I also want to try to modify what's going on in downtown Merriam to help growth. And there's not a good answer from what you've explained, because it's going to be compromises. But I just wanted to find out if what we are possibly agreeing to here today is set in stone, or is it realistically just set in concrete and asphalt that can be changed?
We can move curbs, it's the latter. We can go back and reverse, we can not do anything and decide to do it later. It's just money. I mean, that's the answer. It's a values. It's excuse me. It's how we choose to prioritize the tax dollars. How do we want to spend tax dollars if we want to do it and undo it? If we want to do a piece of it and then do a piece of it later, we certainly can do that. It's a little disjointed. We might lose, if we don't do it, we'll probably lose some of the CARS funding. So we do have a little bit of a strings attached issue in terms of the funding from the county is 50% of that project. So, but again, if we don't do from Hawker to Johnson Drive, we will save some money. So if the total price goes down, we save money. If we do it all and decide to undo it somewhere else, we only paid for 50% of the project. We may not get 50% to undo it. We would have to carry the full burden of that cost, but we certainly can do that if that's a priority of the council.
Other questions for Mr. Engel?
Mayor,
I
think Mr. Neal has wanted to speak for a while, so I'll let him go first.
Okay, Mr. Neal, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Engel that this is a values judgment, and it's a political decision that we have to make, because there are really compelling cases for moving forward and increasing the bikeability. We're talking about
really a relatively small section of Merriam Drive that we are narrowing down. We are also, my own feeling as a small business owner for a long time is that there are many headwinds that buffet us all the time. And as a city, I hate to be potentially adding difficulty to something that's already difficult. And I recognize that people want more quality of life. Many people do. And I in terms of more bikeability, more walkability, and the future of downtown that many people would like to see. But we cannot, it's not fair, in my view, to sort of disregard the other existing stakeholders represented by many of the people here tonight for the downtown area. And there is a fourth option, I think, that we could consider here that will give us all some more data to look at. And that would be to delay and put in place a temporary simulation of the restricted left turn lane through, barriers, cones, whatever, and then do another traffic study and see what's actually happens for, a couple of weeks or a month or so. And then we would actually see what's happening. We're all guessing at this point. Then we haven't spent that money yet, and we don't have to do it and then find out that we might have been wrong and we have to undo it. We can temporarily do it and see what happens. That would be my recommendation on moving forward. Because I think this is potentially could be a serious situation that would be very difficult to undo. There are a lot of legitimate concerns that I heard about notification, and as you all know on the council, it's something I always worry about. Honestly, I went through the study and looked for something that clearly showed, like a plan for the road diet up near Johnson Drive intersection, and it really is difficult. I can't really find something that's obvious reading all the way through it. And I will admit that I wasn't at a number of the meetings due to some health issues in the early stages, so I don't know what precisely was discussed in some of those meetings. And maybe this was discussed, but clearly we have a problem now. There's a lot of people that didn't get the message that should have probably gotten the message, and whose fault that is, that doesn't really matter. We have a decision to make right now about values. Can we find a way to listen to our stakeholders and find a compromise solution or a solution that is based on real numbers? The traffic study, from what I understand, was done during COVID, which may or may not be reflective of current conditions and future conditions. So I would consider there's a fourth option as well, and that would be to simulate that road diet and see what happens.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. I think that I did hear that the traffic study was based on prior to COVID, wasn't it? So that was incorrect, Mr. Neal. It was data that was garnered not during COVID, but prior to COVID. So, any other questions from Mr. Engel?
Yeah,
Ms.
I
Yada, go
had
ahead.
an actual question instead of a comment. Is there any way that we could even just look at redoing the sidewalks and the curbs and making a continuous materiality, because that was a huge thing that we noticed as we were walking through downtown Merriam. We were really talking about looking at the surroundings and just like for accessibility and people that might have mobility issues, it was very hard to kind of navigate because there's different materiality. There's like the faux brick, there's a few different kinds of concrete. So could we at least, if we decide to keep the road the same way from Johnson Drive to Hawker. I'm looking at the map. From Johnson to Hawker, if we keep the road existing, could we look at redoing the curbs and sidewalks as part of the project as well?
Certainly.
And I guess what are
Leaving the profile as it exists, but
from
just
Hawker to
replacing all of
Johnson?
it.
From Hawker to Johnson, yes. But then
Replacing what's
replacing
there.
mill and overlay, but then also sidewalks and curbs.
Sure, we
And
can.
then, but as part of that, like, what does that design implication cost? Like, I mean, there's gonna be more design hours probably for that, or?
Sure, we'll pay more design hours,
Yeah.
sure, because but we're replacing
But we're
what's
reducing,
there.
yeah.
So, I mean, I'd have to kind of defer to our city engineer, but I mean, there would be.
Yeah, I don't need a
some more.
fee like right now. I'm just off the top of your head. I'm just kidding.
There's certainly a cost, right? Just because.
I suggest you talk into the mic so we have it on record. Thank you.
Randy Gorton with BHC. Certainly we can make those changes. There is a cost associated with them, and really the cost is kind of directly related to how much you want to modify what was originally at least understood from input, the direction the city wanted to proceed. If you decide you're changing, right, what direction you want to follow, then it's a matter of really how much do you want to, right, how much of a course change do you want to make. It is a cost, construction cost. It may not be remarkably different. Design-wise, yes, it'll add a little bit to our fee, but that's relatively small compared to everything else involved with the project.
Plus escalation.
If you've got a crystal ball and you can tell me how much, you know what, you've got a new career.
Can you hold the pricing for 90 days instead of a week, please?
I would love that. I have way more control on doing that for us.
I know, I'm totally kidding.
Yeah,
Sorry, I work in the industry too. I have a follow-up question to that. The current sidewalks, do you know if they are truly ADA accessible from Johnson Drive to Hawker as they currently are?
Continuously ADA accessible. Fortunately, I have the design team with me because they couldn't wait to come to the first special city council meeting. I don't recall, Mike, if as it exists today, there was deficient areas where it was non-ADA compliant or not. Nothing apparently sticks in our memory.
Totally understand that it's a
They
off-the-cuff
they should be. That was redone recently enough. ADA was in effect.
I figured I just wanted to clarify that it's a continuous accessibility.
Ms. Shadrich, go ahead.
Would that option mean losing the parallel parking in front of Blondie's
And in front of True Auto.
and in front of True Value as well?
True Auto.
Oh, True Auto. So we would lose the parallel parking, the additional parking that
We'd lose those
people
6
have wanted.
Those 6 spots on the east side of Merriam Drive. Yeah.
We would lose those projected spots. I mean, if we put things back how they are, they don't exist today.
Right,
Can't have all 3 lanes and have on-street parking.
right.
Part
Yeah,
of- yeah.
I know.
So.
Okay.
And the entrance arc?
Yeah, we will have to look at that because it'll depend on, if we keep those curbs where they're at, we can't, where they're currently sitting at, you wouldn't be able to have ADA sidewalks. So it's possible we would lose, we don't know, but it's possible we would lose the entryway.
And I'll point out right now where it's shown is in 3 lanes now, right? So it's currently shown spanning 3 lanes. So if it's, as much anything, you're interested in extending how much farther that center lane is available, the gateway fits that. It's more as you go north.
If we leave it where it is now.
Yeah, if you want to leave the curb lines exactly where they are, that gateway becomes much more expensive.
Structurally, yes, and
Not saying impossible.
but
Money
also
solves a lot of
it
things.
creates accessibility issues on the sidewalk because we're putting it in the street, right?
Correct.
As where the street is now.
I'm not saying it goes away,
Correct.
it's just, it makes it more difficult because we also have to keep in mind that the creek project is currently contemplated. It comes up there behind the wind chimes. So we have to be careful of
Into the
where we put
microphone.
things in there because it's possible. The way that the core project is currently contemplated, it actually runs berms and walls back there up to the bridge. And so we don't know how much space they're gonna cannibalize. That's currently just that kind of planting garden. So we just don't know. I'm not saying that it goes away.
To
I'm
the
just-
south of Stilltime, sorry, where the
to the, yes, to the south of Stilltime. Yeah, there's like that garden, that planting garden there. Yeah, that
I'm sorry, I'm visual. I'm looking at the plan.
part,
I'm not.
part of that very well could be cannibalized for the core project. We don't know. So we probably would just want to be careful if we're going to put something there, to be mindful of the fact that a year from now, they may come and go, hey, sorry, we need that space. We just don't know.
So just to be clear, if we were to keep the road existing the way it is from Johnson to Hawker, we would be losing the 6 spaces that we're adding on the east side of Merriam Drive. And then we would also lose a placemaking opportunity for the gateway. Okay, thank you.
Potentially lose the space, the potentially lose the gateway.
Probably lose the gateway. I'll say
We'd
it.
have to
You don't
look,
have
yeah,
to.
So
Okay.
the parking, just the lower area parking that's just north of Johnson Drive, that would be on those that first block, that's currently on the left in front of, well, on the west side in front of Guitar Lamp, that we were moving to the east side. So that would be gone.
No, they'd stay. If we put back what's there now, what's there now stays.
Stays.
Yep. So status quo, we would leave, I mean, if we leave it, we're leaving, what exists today will exist tomorrow, except for we might have nicer, newer sidewalks. But the curbs are the same. So we would have on-street parking on the west side if we leave it the way that it is.
Right.
If we're just looking if we're looking for the compromise, which is to chase that lane further north, not all the way to Hawker, but further north, so there's additional stacking, then yeah, if you want to do that, if you want to improve and add bike ped facilities, we can't do that, keep the on-street parking and have a three, I mean, it's too cramped in there. There's just not enough room. So if we want to chase the 3-lane profile that's designed, let's see what we got here, over here, we could chase this back to some point that you can determine how far back you want it to go. But in order to make that work, these 4 spots have to go away.
And that still gives us the bikeability and the wider
Well,
sidewalk.
it leaves you the wider sidewalk here, and it leaves you the sidewalk down here. You just create a larger stacking. If the concern is stacking, we can get you more stacking, but we can't get you the wider sidewalks and the on-street parking.
Right.
Yeah, we provide better, shorter pedestrian crossing distances, which is a good thing. Some of the thing on speed, we create slower speeds. We kind of have to create a street that forces drivers to feel less comfortable driving fast, which is part of why it was proposed to come up with 2 lanes instead of 3 lanes, because chief really doesn't want to post an officer there 12, 16 hours a day. This is a way that it always is there to help slow the traffic down. That was why that was a recommendation. That's a very appropriate recommendation if that's what you want to achieve. So I think we can do 3 lanes, provide more stacking, some distance farther to the north, and still provide the wider sidewalk and the multi-use path on the west, sidewalk on the east to meet ADA, make it better than it is, if that is in fact what you find is the balance you want to strike.
I would ask, and this part would apply to you, in reference to currently we have 12-foot wide lanes, and sometimes they're 11-foot wide lanes. Those I've seen, at least in one of the studies, that could be reduced down to 10 or 9.5 or something. Would that get us more space if,
Certainly.
less width per lane? Because that also makes people be a little more careful in driving. It probably slows down a little bit too.
Talking about fire trucks and car
I know.
carriers.
Yeah, I don't want to get too narrow, obviously.
Yeah, it's, again, comfort, safety, we try and, right, balance is the theme of tonight, because you're trying to figure out where is, I guess, equal, right? Equal inconvenience, improvement, cost, all the rest of it. Typically, we look at lanes, we used to do 12-foot lanes, 14-foot lanes. Now we're looking at 11-foot lanes. That's what's shown here for the center left turn lane for southbound. That 10.5 to 11 feet is reasonable. It doesn't seem like drivers, still gives you a little margin for error, right? For inattentiveness, whatever it is, or even to go around somebody in the other lane who's not paying attention. So this is reasonable in this application, somewhere around that 11-foot lane, 10.5 to 11-foot lane.
Go ahead, Mr. Leahy.
Well, you had this pulled up, that actually a couple of questions I had. It seems like if queuing seems to be one of the largest points of, be a large point of concern. We could extend the extra lane back to the crosswalk just north of 58th Street, or just south of the crosswalk there. Actually pick up an extra parallel parking, and as indicated in one of the presentation plans, stripe or sign those parking stalls as no parking during peak hours, which seems to be where our real concern happens to be. I think it was in one of the proposed in the slide deck that we had. I wanted to comment on Congressman Neal's, and at the risk of it being a comment, I'll pose it as a, sorry, council member. At the risk of making it a comment, I'll make it a question to the chief. The idea that, it's more of a rhetorical question, you don't have to get up, just because I didn't want it to be a comment only. The idea about doing temporary markings, we've all heard tonight plenty of times that people don't obey traffic laws down there anyway. What would give us pause to think, or concern to think that people, if we stripe it differently, they would obey those stripings?
Concrete barriers.
Jacob, do you remember talking about that in the committee when we were on the committee before we were elected? And I think I asked Jay that question about like temporarily painting because Shawnee was doing it at that time. And yeah, that was kind of the comment, was like people still don't pay attention to it and it causes more safety issues as you're trying to prove that it might not cause safety issues. So that was kind of why we tabled it, I think. So.
But I mean, that was kind of a part of the previous comment, but I think there's a way to pick up some queuing space in the plan here that would alleviate some of the concerns that we've heard tonight.
I think to that point that you need to decide how much on-street parking, especially on the west side, right, where's its importance versus some of these other things, because keeping it complicates the ability to add additional center lane queuing for southbound left while still trying to achieve some of the other objectives that, I mean, the feedback was very worthwhile to the community. Was, again, I wasn't involved in the PSP, just keeping tabs of it, reading the final report. Those are very valid reasons to want to make these changes if you choose to go forward.
So,
okay, go ahead.
The businesses that where the spots are on the west side have parking in the rear, true? They have parking lots.
They do.
So
So who gets to decide who gets parking on street in front of their business and who doesn't?
You do.
It was rhetorical. I mean, I'm just trying to convey that this is a difficult decision for us and that we are so appreciative of everyone coming to speak to us and we're taking your concerns to heart. I mean, I am. I can't speak for everyone, but I am. And so like that's the decision, that's the conundrum we're in, right? Is like how do we decide who gets benefits and who doesn't? Or, you know, like there's a lot going on here that we're trying to weigh.
And to that point, it is also not standard practice to assign parking, on-street public parking to any particular business property, right? It's public amenity for whichever member of the public gets there to use it. So that's a very important consideration in terms of setting the expectations.
Okay, Ms. Ryder.
Would the raised crosswalk still be an addition if we did the proposed change with the lack of west parking?
It would probably depend on how far back you chase that lane.
It's certainly, it's totally an option if you want raised crosswalks for the benefits that they provide for pedestrians, for traffic calming, those things, safety. Yes, we can put that across 3 lanes just as easily as 2. The bigger point why they were shown that way was, again, they were trying to narrow the roadway to slow traffic down and create a shorter distance for the pedestrians to even be interacting with vehicles. That's why that was proposed. But those are done on 3-lane streets just as well.
Other questions?
Is there though, if this comes back too far, it creates.
We'll have to, yeah, I mean, that's
So
a
would
design question.
we have to use, for the bike route, then there would be, if we had that extra lane, there would be sharrows all the way up into the point. How would the bike lane like intersect if it doesn't go up onto that crosswalk?
If we leave it as is, as it exists today,
Just real quick, the Sharrows go all the way down Merriam Drive.
Correct.
There's Sharrows go all the way down Merriam Drive to the point where it gets right in front of Farmers Market, and that's the point where it goes over to the 10-foot rec path.
Okay.
Yeah, in this particular section, bicycles technically have two options. You've got a multi-use path on the west side, or they can use the street. Legally, right? They can ride on the street, and that's what the Sharrows are there to demarc.
Right. I know that sharrows are technically, they're showing that they're a little more dangerous than actually using like a separated path, and so I'm trying to keep.
It's definitely not the same thing. A Sharrow, which is shared, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're co-locating bicycles and cars.
Right. So the quicker we can get people
Off.
Yeah. It's safer for
But the irony,
cyclists.
and I know there's cyclists in the room, quite often they would just as soon use the street pavement if they're commuting through as opposed to an off-street side path. I know as an engineer, I go, hey, I'm gonna give you a side path. Would you use it? And they go, no, I want to use the lane. Sometimes I can't understand why they choose to, but that's a preference, and we have to honor that and allow for that, just like we're talking about a lot of other things. We need to decide what gets included.
Can I piggyback on that real quick? So the reason we were widening the sidewalk on the west side here was to allow for cyclists to,
No. The reason there was being widened was to add to amenities such as benches, such as bike racks, also to provide the opportunity for folks, if they wanted to use that space for other purposes, such as on-street dining, on sidewalk dining, and things like that. The purpose was not, and increase the walkability of the area. It was not specifically for bicycles. There was a recognition that family bicyclists coming southbound may wish to continue to use that sidewalk, but it was not, the widened sidewalk is not for bikes specifically, not dedicated for bikes. It was dedicated for the amenities for downtown.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions on the council, or?
Could you
Ms. Hans,
Could
go
you
ahead.
point on the map of where back to Hawker actually is, please?
well, yeah, back to Hocker is here. So which one? So effectively, what we would do if we were going to do nothing south of Hocker is we would take this, I don't remember, take this profile right here where it's 2-lane, and it would just, I mean, somewhere around here, open back up into the 3-lane profile. So the curb would go back to where it is now. So, I mean, there'd be some sort of transition period, I'm sure. I don't want to speak for the engineer, but this is where Hocker is. So you would essentially take it from 2, open it back up into 3, and it would continue from there all the way down with the existing profile. Where the curbs are today, that's where the curbs would be then if we do nothing to Hocker.
It's just off that map. Okay.
Yeah, it's just immediately to the right.
Okay, any other questions?
Have we talked about it?
Okay. As it come to that time this evening,
Mayor?
Oh, yes, Mr. Neal, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I unfortunately wasn't able to see the graphic. Where we have it down to 2 lanes, is that in front of the Merriam Market area between that and 5701? Is that where we're it's down to 2 and then would go back up to 3?
Yeah, go back up to 3 south of Hocker Drive.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, it's two. How far back? I don't have it in front of me. I just can't see the where the two lanes are basically all the way along until there, or where are we? We have two lanes. I'm sorry, I don't have that graphic that y'all are looking at. So what are we? Right now, we're talking about from Hawker to Johnson Drive, and or some position between Hawker and Johnson Drive. That would be three. Have that middle lane. Would that be something that we would need to kind of look at from an engineering standpoint? I really feel like we need to do something, modify this design, the current design, in some way to make the situation better. And I'm trying to understand visually what how. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
Mr. Neal, this is exactly what we've been talking about, is modifying the design, and by going back and making it three lanes from Johnson Drive back to Hawker, which is basically what folks have mostly asked about, without changing the sidewalks, which means we're going to give up some parking. So
Right.
I'm sorry you don't have it in front of you, but we need to.
No, and I understand that, and that's fine. I think that's what we need to be looking at. So I agree with that.
Okay, having said that, I don't know if we can, is there a motion from someone on the council here this evening that would like to modify the design or go forward or make a motion in reference to going forward as it was proposed? Or the modification as we've talked about with basically going back to 3 lanes or keeping it 3 lanes and basically replacing what we have now from Hawker to Johnson Drive?
I wanted to make one quick question on the design schedule. When are we set to wrap up final design and permitting and go to bid?
That probably depends on what happens this
Well,
evening, but if
right
we were
now-
to move forward with it, we would probably be going out to bid by the end of the month. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's.
If we were to proceed as currently designed.
Okay. I was just trying to get in my mind, if we started to make significant or even minor changes, it's going to have a pretty immediate impact on
Sure, it'd push it
that
out
schedule.
at some amount of
Yeah,
time. I don't know exactly.
The bigger the change, the longer the time.
And the more it costs.
In design, not necessarily construction.
True.
Well, we've had a lot to think about this evening, and I know the business people, obviously, our council meetings normally go an hour. We've been here 3 hours, so we appreciate the turnout of all the residents and the people that don't live in Merriam, that are bicyclists, and all of our business people for coming down and talking to us this evening. This has been on our minds, and we've been looking at what can be done and what's best for the community and going forward, and it's a tough decision for all these council people to try to do that and try to make sure that everybody's interest is actually reflected in the design of this project. So, having said that, Ms.
Mr.
Haynes,
Mayor, I would actually like to make a motion if you're willing to accept one.
I am willing to accept a motion.
I move that the city proceed with the Merriam Drive street improvements with the revision to extend 3 lanes from Johnson Drive to Hawker, and to move forward with redoing the design and look for opportunities even after completion of making revisions as needed.
Okay, so, I have a motion. Do I hear?
Can I just clarify what
Okay.
that means?
Yes, please.
Mr. Engel, probably be better maybe to walk through the graphic here so we all have a good idea of what the motion was. So, so as I understand it, keep no changes to the plan as currently designed till we get to Hawker. And then from Hawker, are we wanting to go back to the profile as it currently is today, as it is shown on the aerial photograph? Is that the motion?
Or the extension of the.
That's what I'm trying,
I know
that's
see
exactly
where
why I
Director
came
Dyer is
up
going.
here.
Do we want to try to make this better than what it currently
I have
is?
a question. Do we have to change the plans on the east side? Can we get the 3 lanes if we just change the plans on the west side?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
We don't have enough room.
Then change the east side.
So tell me where, how far north the 3 lanes go currently then?
The 3 lanes currently go all the way.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
All the way from Hawker, all the way up to 55th.
I want it to stop at Hawker. That's what my motion is. From
But
Hawker.
currently, we have a right turn lane that does extend back a little ways that actually goes to 4 at Johnson Drive.
Right. So again, that's kind of why I'm trying to get clarity here. So is the motion to keep the plan as designed till we get to Hawker? So going, I'm sorry, apologize. So going north to south. So
Yes.
from 55th Street south to Hawker, keep it as it's been showed tonight.
Yes.
Okay. So from Hawker south.
Right.
So what's the intent of your motion?
Well, what I was hearing was that we want to be 3 lanes from Hawker to Johnson Drive.
And we've heard a couple of different ways to accomplish that.
Okay.
What I've heard seems to be the most is that preference is to keep it as the current profile in order to achieve that 3 lanes.
That's not what I think.
Okay, so that's why we need to have this conversation.
Either.
Yes.
Can you take the
Sure.
graphic to the Johnson Drive? Can we keep the 3 lanes at Johnson Drive so that we can have our entrance thing? Where we have a right turn lane there.
There's 4 lanes.
When you say 3 lanes, you mean 3 southbound lanes or 3 total lanes?
3
3
total
total
lanes.
lanes.
Is what is shown.
2
Right, so
lanes
we would
and a
keep-
turn.
We would keep the Johnson Drive part as designed.
I think to resolve this uncertainty and how it factors into your motion, Chris.
Can somebody point at the thing,
We have a little
please?
red dot thing there. 'cause
Yeah.
I think
Like,
we're
no
actually
no-
looking at.
No be mousing, like use your hands and go.
No, they
Oh,
can't.
go over
Oh.
here and point.
There you go.
Can they do that?
Gotcha. So, actually what,
Button there.
okay. It's low wattage, you're okay. So because I think at this point, we're just trying to use words to describe what everybody thinks they want to do here. If you're okay and however you need to do your motion, the best thing is if we provide you a drawing that shows an alternative configuration that's for 3 lanes from the intersection at Johnson Drive, which is what we're showing now, and extending that to Hawker, and we can show you what parking can stay, what parking can't stay, where the curb lines can be, where they are today, and you can all agree whether you find that to be the right balance, or no, that's not acceptable, and you want to look at some other modifications. Because what I'm afraid of as I hear this, you're going to have to continue debate because words aren't going to do the job.
Right. So I can revise my motion? Oh, yes.
I just don't think that Hawker, I think taking that to Hawker is too far. I think
Yeah,
to
go to
58th
the next slide where it
I
shows
think
the.
58th Street is the right place to stop that.
So why would we go all the way to Hawker and then have that little chunk? That's just 2.
I thought that was the logical break, but we don't have the,
Yeah, so some point, assuming you decide you want 2 lanes in front so you can have angled on-street parking, which is the way to do it without having to tear a bunch into the yard, right, by the marketplace or further north along 5701. Some point here, we're going to have to transition from 2 lanes to 3. Hawker or 58th Street are kind of natural spots, depending on how we're widening that from 2 lanes to 3.
I'm willing to revise my motion. Sorry.
Okay,
I know.
Mr. Silvers, go ahead.
I know we want to get this done because we all have jobs on top of this job. But I think what will help clarify this is we're listening to and hearing the businesses, and the businesses want to extend the turn lane. So if we could extend the turn lane, we don't want to extend it all the way to Hawker. That seems too drastic, unless people disagree with me. Jacob and I have been kind of talking over here, and we agree that to 58th Street would probably help alleviate this.
58 Terrace?
I'm sorry,
58th Terrace. 58th Terrace is
sorry.
where I would like to take the third
Okay,
lane.
that
back
makes
to.
way more sense.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
that's on me.
Just right in
58th
front
Terrace.
of Blondie's where that,
Okay.
where the raised crosswalk, yes.
58th Terrace.
And for the record, I'd like to also propose we make the investment to add the turn signal on to tie it in with the train for the investment that was going to cost to add the signaling.
Yeah, we would have to replace the controller.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
$6,000, right?
It's a cost that I'm willing as a council member to invest in
Same.
that.
I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to incorporate that in this motion.
Well,
I would like to revise my motion to say from Johnson Drive north to 58th Terrace for it to be 3 lanes, which is 2 through lanes and a turn lane, right? Okay.
Is that in line with what everybody else was thinking?
Well,
I
we
didn't
can
wanna speak for
vote on
myself.
it and then we'll know.
Fair enough.
If someone wants to second my motion that I have now revised, and I'm going to add on that I would say we would we want to look at it again once it's redrawn and where we can actually see it extended all on one screen and go from there. So authorizing a redo of the design.
okay. We have a motion, and I hear a second.
So we're voting on authorizing,
A redesign from Johnson Drive north to 58th Terrace of 3 lanes.
So chasing the 3-lane profile to the north a bit.
Further.
Yeah, what's currently
I will
shown,
second this to Dave Neal.
58th Terrace, and then narrow down from there.
Show me where 58th Terrace is.
it's right in front of the crosswalk.
Yeah.
So from here, it would be this same 3-lane section.
So you're basically going to cut the west side parking out. I mean, the existing parking.
And we
that's there
want to
now.
see that design.
Sure.
Okay. So that was my motion. I don't know whether anyone's going to second it or not.
This is Dave Neal. I would second that.
Okay, Mr. Neal seconds. Okay, having a motion and a second on the floor, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Okay, I think I understand what I'm voting for. So aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
We'll get that design and we'll get that back in front of council.
Okay.
Will
Thank
we
you, Madam
be able
Clerk.
to add it to the agenda for Monday night?
I doubt,
In 4 days.
I don't know, it depends on,
Well, if, I don't know how
and
much.
the packets already went out for Monday.
Oh, okay, never mind.
We actually looked at this a little bit.
I figured you might
yesterday.
have.
I think we can give you at least an illustration that shows how we interpret, right, what you said, to give you a better idea of what that really would likely change.
Okay.
And I think if
And we
that
can-
works for how you're.
That works. I guess
And
my
we can
question's
see
going to
it
be,
under
are we going to be traffic engineers and
No.
want all that data also?
No.
Okay.
What we want to see on Monday night under staff items maybe is a scratched out kind of plan.
Yeah, if we have that, I'm happy to bring it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You work that out, we appreciate it. Well, for those in the audience, thank you for going with us this evening for 3 hours and 8 minutes. I do hope if you take away one thing is that we've tried to listen to everybody, both the business owners and also the bicyclist itself, to try to make it better for downtown Merriam. Having said that, is there anything else, Mr. Engel, before we call for a motion to adjourn? Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
We have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, second?
We have a second. Madam Clerk.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.